Again, Mark Dibbs, Civil Engineer with Combat Engineering Group for the 580 Main Assisted Living Project. Just to give some updates on where we are and what's going on. I had a conversation with Carol yesterday with some of her some questions she still had outstanding. She felt to take a look at on the plans. I've gone through them. I plan to just cover kind of cover them and how it changed the plans as a start. And we'll go through that first and then see if there's any additional questions on the project and your concerns.
Excellent, thank you. Does it have the revised O&M in here?
Yes.
It does?
It has the BMP plan.
Okay.
I didn't bring a copy, just the written part.
Okay.
It was attached to an email, but
Today's email?
yeah.
Okay, I haven't opened up yet.
But all the full-size stuff is there. Just, again, this is the project with the assisted living facility at the back of the parcel, the office building. I'm going to use these plans as I didn't update the glossy, but we can show you some of the changes if I use that. Just some clarification on the silt fence erosion control throughout the project. This is just going to show we've added, there's some work will be done to install this storm scepter unit, which is in line on an existing culvert. So we've added some erosion control around that. There's also detailed pages, I'm just using this overall sheet. We've added some erosion control along the area of this walkway, adjacent to the existing drainage basin in this area for, for any disturbance that will cause. I've also tightened up the erosion control on this area as much as possible. I think this line through this area moved about 6 to 8 feet just to limit disturbance some, as well as added some significant notes regarding the well location. We're relocating this existing well. It's basically the well of influence will be in the building. So right now it's proposed to be approximately in this area, subject to final DEP approval. Whether it moves here or up into this area, or even there was an original spot over here. We would propose erosion control around the installation of the well and any trenching to get to the well. So I've added that note.
So what's changed since last time? Just the note?
Just the note regarding the erosion control around the well installation.
Okay, so from the original filing, it wasn't over there, right? So
Correct.
when I was looking at
actually
the plans
in
and
the
sort of
corner.
fine-tooth combing through them, I was like, I don't remember us ever talking about that. So he may have mentioned it when he was here on the 4th, or were you here 2 weeks before that, the end of October's meeting?
The change in
21st
location
meeting.
in life.
But I don't know, I didn't catch it at that point, and so I didn't know what you guys all had either. And so it wouldn't change into the wetland there? Right?
No, it wouldn't. There's nowhere it would be in the wetland. This is actually, once on the sidewalk, this goes from wetland just to there's no woods. It's just meadow and grass as you get down to the walkway. So
the dots are the wetland, is that what?
Yeah.
yes, and again, we could go to the more detailed plan.
Can I ask just a sort of broad, general clarification question? Because I see that there are like 4 zones that you have for the drain areas, or?
Yep.
So if you could just like in one sentence, start from the finished floor elevation of the building, and then just sort of point to where the water is going.
Okay. The water for the roof And
What's
most
the
of this-
highest point, and then work your way down that way? Just, I can look at the plans and see all the different grades and elevations, but if you just sort of give a big picture.
The highest point in the area is off-site, so there's a portion of the site drains to here.
So that's drain 1,
Yes.
okay?
Drain 2 is the roof area, proposed drain 2 is the roof area, and all this pavement drains down to this basin in the back.
Okay, that's where the rain garden is.
Yep.
That's drain 3, okay?
Uh,
I think. I'm looking at this document.
Okay, yes, sorry, that's drain 3.
Yeah,
Drain 2 is the area associated with this parking in here, and that actually comes out the front through a piped drainage system.
it's drain
That's 2.
Yeah,
And 4 is kind of this leftover area that heads out this way. It's not really any pavement, it's not any of the parking area, it's kind of the leftover piece that drains off into this area. It's mostly grass and existing. No, it's nothing, I think, there's absolutely nothing in drain 4 of a proposed condition.
it's just helpful to hear you say it.
Yep.
Thanks.
The only other thing I remember on the erosion control was, some of the plans showed around the rain garden staggered and some showed straight. I don't know.
Correct, yeah, they've been, there's a couple overall plans and then the detailed plans, it's all been coordinated, so they're all consistent. She's talking about over here, just the riprap expands out a little bit more. Just right here, so you see the hay bale kind of goes in and out around the riprap. It's just been coordinated throughout all the plans. Another change was this, this is the overall plan. This is right now it's the proposed pump house for the whole water system. Again, the MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing design for this building are not complete yet. We need these initial kind of site plan type approvals before we get into that. But we are proposing to put the pump house outside the upland resource area. Previously, I think it was on this side, kind of close. So, whether it ends up, over here, or it'll be outside most likely it'll end up on this end of the building somewhere.
I had just asked Mark, because it was shown in the Aura area, what would be entailed, and so rather than getting into the details of what they would construct, they've just moved it, so they've avoided the alteration.
If I recall, the dumpster was.
Yes, that was the initial.
Yep, that, we'll get to that. So, and part of the final responded comments from the engineering consultant, H&W, we did propose, there's a grassed, let's just go to the detail plan for this one. Let's see it. Just a grassed bioretention area right in here. Basically all the runoff that kind of makes its way through here just from grassed portions of the site does get a chance to kind of pool in this. It's literally only 9 inches, a foot deep, and it's just a grassed swale before it gets to the wetlands. It's to make the pre and post drainage calculations work. We're not really adding any pavement to this area, but just the way the numbers work, we needed a small bioretention area. And Carol and I went back and forth a little bit. This post and rail fence is a visual barrier between what we plan to mow on this side and what we plan to have natural on the other side. And you'll see this bioretention area is on the natural side, but you do need to, that is a BMP, and you will need to maintain it, actually to a mow of 6 inches, that
I think that's water.
the least you want to mow it is the 6 inches. So, I've tried to, we talked about, do we bring this fence around it? But I think through the O&M and through the notes on the plans, and you can access that off this is the gravel drive. I think it's best to just mow that small thing, and continue to have some natural area around it.
So that bigger swale line doesn't need to be, that can still be more
Yeah.
meadow, that can be once or twice a year?
Yep.
Or not even, it could become wooded?
Yeah, it could. There's a high point through here, so the site wanted to create like a puddle here, so there's just some slight drainage just to get it out to the wetlands. So we don't have to cut down this hill or, do any grading in that area. So it's just some natural, gentle slope grading.
But the position of the fence doesn't change?
I have not proposed to change it. The only reason we would possibly to change it was to, right now we have some area that we technically need to maintain outside of the fence.
Right.
We were trying to limit that.
Yeah.
We could, if you desire, just put it around. It's not a big area, and it's kind of up next to the gravel driveway that we need to maintain going out to the gardens. So, right now we're proposing just to maintain the base of that.
If we kept the fence where it is, that doesn't limit access. I mean, does it make it
No, they could come off the
harder?
gravel driveway.
Okay.
Correct, yes. The gravel driveway comes right by it. Maybe even one single post sign, or, bio-retention area or something
Yeah,
like
there
that.
probably should be. I think a sign is a good idea, just so it's clear, for, where it is, or if somebody, somebody who's driving to the garden sees somebody in there mowing and they think they're in the wetland, it's like, the little sign, bio-retention, it's meant to be
Yeah, some sort of,
maintained.
just some sort of maintenance sign here.
So can I just ask, so it's supposed to retain the water, I forget for how long then? Is it designed for like
It should-
72 hours?
Yeah, it should not any more than that. You don't want to stay any more.
So,
It's great.
and so again, Horsley Lane went and looked at all of that, but since we didn't really look at it in any details, are the soils then, the soils there are gonna hold it? Or do you have to add different material to it?
No, we actually, since there's no parking area, there's no, car access other than the gravel driveway, which has existed all along. It's not really designed to treat, so it's basically loam and seed on the natural soil, sandy soil, so it's sandy throughout there. So it'll infiltrate and hold as necessary. There's no, it's not lined or anything like that to keep water from going down.
That's for retain or detain?
Just a slight, very, very minimal retainage to just slow the water down a little bit to get it. I think if I don't have the calcs with me, but extremely minimal flows. Again, there's essentially no pavement. There is the gravel driveway. It's just the way the hydrology.
Well,
calcs
partly I
work.
just wanna make sure that we're not getting complaints later that it's not draining, so.
Okay,
You
yeah.
know, we've got breeding habitat, for mosquitoes, all the residents are complaining, you approved it, you fix it, or whatever. So I just want, so it's meant to drain,
Yep.
but it may hold water to slow it down for a few days,
Yes.
and up to 6 to 12 inches or something.
Yep.
And some of the water is gonna get absorbed by this road, right? Because it's a gravel driveway? Because the water.
Yeah, yeah, and this is all
Slow it down.
grass. I mean, this,
slow
the
down.
leach field, assuming it's got some nice grass on it, there,
Right.
conceivably this won't even get water. By
Right.
the time this leach field gets established, this is a nice, gentle, sloped area. It's more about meeting the stormwater management calculations. And I think as one of the things I was going to get to is this is also from the walkway in the back is also a porous pavement. It's proposed to be porous pavement, so there's no runoff from that, and that's actually going to be sucking up water as much as anything. So conceivably, this, it doesn't even see much.
All those stormwater considerations have either been peer reviewed or the result of the peer review.
Correct.
I just want to make sure you guys touched base on some of them because we hadn't really talked about them in any depth. And that area was just, there's a lot more grading next to the edge of the vegetated wetland than we really talked about or looked at in the first go around.
And then throughout the plans, the bioretention, this is known as bioretention area 1, details and the O&M have been coordinated. We can get into that a little bit. Carol did have a question. This is a holding tank for irrigation water. It's tied into the roof drains. She just wanted to make sure that it wouldn't, groundwater is relatively high in that area. Buoyancy calcs will be provided. We just don't want the thing to float if it's ever empty. It's possible that the buoyancy, the tank can float even though it's a 40,000 pound tank, it can still float if it's deep enough in groundwater. So that's been provided.
That will be provided, right?
Correct, and that's another, the size of that, I did not spec a specific size for that. That's another function of the final plumbing plans, the final building plans, I think, and an irrigation design. But those tanks, whether they're 2,000 gallons or 10,000 gallons, are all within a foot or two in dimension.
But there's no, you don't have to grade up around them and fill around them.
No, they're underground. And if the calculations do show that they'll float, they add a key onto the bottom. They basically just make the bottom slab wider, and it creates more weight between the soil that's on top of that slab and the slab itself. I did confirm, Carol, just on there's a bioretention area 2, which is the bigger area. This is just a grassed bioretention. This area here, which we provide a planting schedule, she just did inquire if these species were able to handle the bioretention area and the water being put into it. And all of the species on the list are known as...
Yeah, so flood tolerant and salt tolerant, I think were the things I was looking for.
They're known as... Well, my environmental scientist that put this together confirmed that they meet the requirement for rain garden design. I can give you the references he cited to me.
Why is it that size versus larger or, it's kind of like in the corner of a parking lot, and I don't see how it, I see that water drains down to it, way down in the corner, but I don't understand why it's that size and not somewhere else or...
It's, one reason it's that size is to reduce the number of parking spaces we have to remove. It's just a function of the site. Another, in the location, this is the lowest point before the basin. Otherwise, there's...
Why did you have to reduce the parking lot? I didn't catch that. Why did you have to reduce the size?
Well, we're trying not to reduce the existing parking, so it's kept to this.
So that's why it's not bigger. I misunderstood you.
It's not within the parking though, isn't it? Within the drive-through
It is within the drive-through.
or drive around? Or
Yeah, there's a drive lane coming
And it's
around.
related to the removal of the impermeable surface of the parking lot.
Right, so I mean, we do, technically now, we kind of have these parking spaces that are on a dead end, which is not a big deal. It's just harder to back out of a space that you can't do this, but.
The original plan too had 3 rain gardens, and actually Horsley and Witten, a peer review consultant, was the one who sort of guided them into one.
Yeah, it had 3
3 small ones?
pieces.
Yeah.
And the purpose was, for those, was to keep this, it basically, I think it had one here, so these people could drive around, so there was one there, or vice versa, and there was one here, so, you know, the next, so there was always a loop around. But, you know, it only affects the last 3 spaces, and you can still get in and out, that's not. So it's basically just a function of the existing site conditions.
So you'll get us the references, or did you already send me those?
I planned on having them here, but, yeah, I will get it.
Okay, I just like to check that. Did you have any comments on the plants?
No, they all look like they were native plants and
Yeah, the other
salt tolerant. But it'd be better to have his consultant send info.
better to have what?
The consultant.
Reference. Yeah, I just didn't know how salt tolerant some of the New England asters, I didn't.
How wet would it be there? Yeah, New England Aster is the one question I had too. I think there was-
That one, these are check dams, so water can flow through here, but that can, again, hold a foot to a foot and a half of water when it really gets inundated by a big storm. But it, again, will drain out quickly.
The other ones all look like wetland plants, but I thought the aster was more, sort of a dry meadow kind of.
Yeah, the meadow sweet, I also wasn't sure about. Meadow sweet to me is more of an upland. Yeah.
What's the Spirea? That was more lowland.
We'd have no
No.
problem swapping some out either if there's something that, but I'll get you. the
Okay.
We're not sure, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that.
No, I'd like to see the references.
Let's just go back to this. Next thing is the dumpster. We had it down here, right up against, actually, let's go to the layout. I didn't have a real problem with placing it just off at the end of, far away.
So where
They
was the-
still, before, this is a loading area, that doesn't necessarily mean where trash would come out, or would be transported up to here, or
So where was the old location?
down
It's
here,
down
right
there,
up
okay.
against the edge. And I did point out that, like, it doesn't, this location was not a good location for windborne debris and stuff like that, but anything that would have leached out of it would have had to make it away all the way down through the rain garden, so it was okay regarding any kind of, rain impacts, but wind blowing it is relatively close to the resource areas. As far as the site changes, that's what I had, for revisions to the site. The other thing was the O&M, the operation management plan, or maintenance plan. Made some changes to that. Most of them was, a lot of the changes were just coordinating the other, tying that into the latest layout. And one thing I did create was a BMP location plan. Basically, these boxes are the, bioretention area type of 1, bioretention area 2. I even called out the existing. One thing is included in there is minimal maintenance, ongoing maintenance to these existing basins. Only in reference to the outlet. This one has a specific outlet. But basically, at this point, they're very vegetated. you know, at least the edges and things like that. We're not planning to
These
tear
were,
them all up.
pre-1996, right?
Yes, so we're not trying to, you know, rip them out for any reason. But there are some physical structures, there's some concrete weirs here that can tend to have a little, you know, they're V-notched weirs that can just build up some branches and things like that. You literally there's no way even to get to it other than to walk to. Just hand maintenance throughout, though, that's listed in the thing, so those existing basins are called out. The only portion of a basin that we continue to look at is the half of the front basin. You can see if you go by there, it's a nice looking pond, and it's still used today as a fire pond. So it needs to continue to have the volume that's needed. So if for any reason sediment would build up at the outlet or somewhere, we need to keep an eye on that one, no matter what. Because it's used as a fire protection pond. So we've identified.
But so it's also identified as a wetland on this plan as part of the delineation. I think the original application, he had it as part of the wetland, right?
Honestly, I've never had it other than the flags with the numbers are only in this portion. It was never.
Oh, I thought we said that the original the basin in the back, we had identified as wetland.
That one we did. We tied the wetlands around it.
Okay.
Right through here. This one was never.
That one was included.
It's just there's a gravel driveway here for the fire trucks to get in. And they use it. They either, you know, they test their equipment or they do something with it and inspect it.
So does
I
it,
don't
does it
think we'd
provide
ever
any
have to-
other habitat functions that we would be caring about? Vernal pool?
I mean, it was designed as a fire pond when it was built.
Yeah, we always in the
We're not
past, we
proposing
always-
to do anything to it, but if we noticed, you know, if it did get, for some reasons, it got
So I guess
something
I'm just
we'd
bringing it
have
up in part because DEP's new regulations, they just promulgated new regulations, and it pre-1996 is not considered something that you can that's exempt from the Wetlands Protection Act, even if it was a man-made stormwater structure. So this, you know, I don't know that we looked at that in terms of its functions. Yes, it was man-made, but how's it been functioning? It's been functioning like a wetland. Are we treating it like a wetland? I don't know if you guys thought about it that way. I guess I was thinking it had been called a wetland, so I guess I'm mistaken that you didn't call it that way.
Yeah, no, it's been,
Considering it.
and the fire department has been at
Yeah,
the
so I
planning
need to
board
think about
meetings,
that
and they
in terms of
continue to
decision.
use it, and they're actually gonna use it for the new bank as well. It needs to.
We have other places, though, that the fire department uses that are part of the wetlands themselves, too, you know, that aren't
Right,
necessarily just exempted.
I don't
Because-
anticipate needing to do anything in it, it's just
Yeah.
if,
But it would be good for us to make a determination on that since this is before us.
I mean, we could.
So you might want to take a look at
least,
it.
Yeah, we have to go see that.
You know, provide notification, you know, if it's a condition that we have to notify the commission if we're gonna do any work in there, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it might require filing depending on the extent of it.
Yeah,
Because
right now, we're not proposing to.
Yeah, so you do have the little BMP, though, for just removing sediment at the outlet, is that what you said in, or that's in your O&M?
Yeah, just to keep outlets clear. Again, I don't feel we'll have to do much. That's what it felt like that was an area that, for some reason, that filled up and there was no volume there anymore. But it definitely serves this building as a fire protection piece, and they're trying to put an agreement in place that they can use it for the new bank too. There was just a quick text on the snow storage. There's been snow storage listed on the plans. It's just kind of a typo on that, and then the O&M, we've revised that. So, Carol, if you had missed that.
Well, I had lists of stuff, so I have to compare it to what you said, but it
Okay.
sounds like he hit a lot of the stuff, if not
Yeah.
everything that I brought up to his attention.
I just quickly Googled the Meadowsweet and the Aster, and they do both like wet soil, so they seem to be just as
So the other thing that, I don't know if you're going to bring it up, but so one of the other things that I said that would be helpful to talk about, and we're kind of getting on to time now at 7:30, but was whether you're going to require any surety or any kind of funds to be put in place for any of the work in the aura. So again, maybe even the overall plan, the glossy plan, we can see the aura better, it'd be helpful to,
It's identifying color.
even though it doesn't have the bioretention area on it. And
Nora is the solid red line. Solid red line. So there's work, the walkways, the fencing, any grading.
Loaming, seating.
Yep, loaming, seating. Through this area, there is a change of grade to match in this saw cut line up to the site. One aspect of this project will be, since it's a new building, I assume a certificate of occupancy will be tied to a certificate of compliance from you. So it just, from a developer standpoint, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of risk that things won't be done and won't be completed, because if we're building this thing, we're going to want a certificate of occupancy, and we understand, I don't exactly know how Bolton works, but we won't be able to get that unless we meet the requirements of the commission, so.
I don't think our general practice is to say, well, you don't need a bond to protect the work from not being done, because you'll probably finish it anyway. That's,
I think it's what we usually require is 1.5 times the cost of the work and 3 times the cost of any restoration, replication, landscaping, invasive species management, that kind of stuff.
Did I read that it could be released in order to perform that work?
No,
Actual-
it can be released, it can be released, reduced, usually, or
Okay.
released afterwards. So like the pavement and the walkway would probably be one area, that would be 1.5 times typically what we would look at, for the cost of doing that, or finishing it, or removing it if we needed to remove it. And then the landscaping part would be the other parts. I think the bioretention area, the plants in there, and that construction, that's not shown on this plan, but that's all within the aura area, that we would probably require the costs for that construction and planting.
Do you do
Okay.
3 times the cost of
We do it for the plants,
the
yeah.
plants? Just
Yeah. But usually we've done it, so we've usually done it 3 times the cost for the plants and associated with that work. So for the bioretention area, it's not 1.5 for the labor, it's 3 times for the
Oh.
whole, like the replication restoration. That's how we've done
I
it.
see.
The other thing is more infrastructure, so the fence or the walkways or the paving, or if there were catch basins or drainage or something that were in
That's
the.
the 1.5.
Yeah, so I guess you do have the other thing that's in the aura is really right adjacent to the wetland is the outlet pipe for the roof drainage.
Yeah. So we should provide a estimate of
Yeah.
those costs. Okay.
So because I didn't get to my final review when I started it a while back, till yesterday, Mark, was able to get a bunch of stuff done, but I haven't now looked at it since he did that. So the intention, I think, which was really the intention of the last meeting, but hopefully, unless you guys have other questions or comments that you want to, talk about, was that we would hope to get the order conditions in draft form for the next meeting. And I think the thing that I would probably need your input on is whether or not you think you want to say something about that front wetland then, whether or not you're considering that, part of a wetland resource area or not. And I'd have to look back in the notice how
Where is that on this map? Is that
It's
Not
way up.
way out there?
Yeah,
You drive right by it.
yeah, right when you drive by the site, it's the
So-
first thing you see.
Are they gonna be near that at all?
With the arrow with the sidewalk, and they're putting the storm scepter in, the drainage is going to that. But since they're, you know, it's currently being used as for fire, and if they're proposing to use it with the bank, you know, it's just, you know, if it's serving some other functions, it should be evaluated, you know. Or, I mean, and what brought it up to Mark was, what he was saying was the operation and maintenance, you know, so if they need to go in there and clean out sand or silt, you know, are they exempt? Can they just do it, you know, or is it a wetland they have to file? So that's, I think, what we're looking
So
at.
should we do a group site visit for that, or just each go?
I think it's something you can drive by pretty easily. You can pull in the parking lot and see it,
Yeah,
you know.
just pull right into, you know, I know some of you didn't go on the initial site visit, but you'll see the Bolton Office Park sign and you just pull it in.
So the question is any of this activity going to change its configuration or behavior as a wetland?
Yeah,
Well, I
and
think
we'll-
it doesn't have any any value now, other than being fug, right? I mean, what-
Yeah, we're actually,
wetland.
So it was constructed as a stormwater basin and
Right.
for fire suppressant.
Right.
And, but it's before the stormwater regulations, and which makes it, with today's wetlands changes in the regulations that they've just promulgated, it's not an exempt basin. So, you know, and a lot of basins that were designed pre-1996 have become wetlands, which he said in the back, they did consider that one basically as a wetland.
So how do you know if it's a wetland, or if a basin is a wetland or not? What are we looking for specifically?
Well, is there any bordering vegetated wetland around it? Is it, I guess so some of the information may need to come from them. I mean, you can look at it, but then you may say, if we don't find it in the notice of intent, you know, is it serving any other function? So what is it serving? Is it provide any breeding habitat for, as a vernal pool, was one thing I was asking. Does it have fish in it? I don't, you know, if it does, then it wouldn't provide the vernal pool.
Okay, well, we wouldn't be able to tell if it's a vernal pool now.
Well, there's other stuff on, looking at it, you wouldn't know that. We can look at the heritage maps to see whether they've hit it as a
Okay.
potential vernal pool. But if you knew that there were fish in it, then it probably wouldn't serve that function. You know, it has an inlet, but does it have an outlet?
yeah, we just also feel it has a life safety need as well, so.
Oh, and I
yeah,
don't disagree
we're
with
not-
that.
We're not saying that.
That's just where
It's
we're
just-
coming.
I mean, that's how it was designed.
Right.
You know, it's just whether or not it would be exempt for future maintenance or improvements or anything like that.
Yeah, the only thing the proposal affects it is the storm scepter is actually a new treatment chain. You know, right now, majority of the runoff of pavement and parking does go to that without the treatment of the storm scepter. So we're adding that on top of everything. So it's a, you know. it's-
And like I said, that's why I guess I figured we were treating it as a resource area as well, because we talked about that work. So I guess I was, in my mind, I thought that we were treating it within our jurisdiction.
All right. I can certainly try that.
So then can we continue it to
I do drive by there.
December 2nd, is that? And just because in case anything else when I'm drafting it comes up. So the other thing that I just want to point out to the commission, because I'm still not sure how you've redrafted it in the O&M, but, so the two sites will probably be separated at some point. So there's, I forget what you said, like a 30-acre site, right? And then there's the existing.
Yeah, it's essentially a 40-acre site, that'll be 20 and 20. And once that does get separated in the O&M, who takes care of what? You know, the bioretention areas on this lot, some drainage from this lot drains into there. And then easements, cross easements, you know, it's almost an attorney level question at that point between these two properties, you know, and all tied into the sale. And so the O&M right now covers both properties. It does state that if changes hands, and the O&M has to go with the new owner, not the old owner type thing.
But still, if it goes with a new owner and it goes to the assisted living, are they then going to be going on to maintain that rain garden, which is on the old site?
And I wonder if I could just number the BMP plan and just say BMPs 1 through 6 in perpetuity go to this lot, BMPs.
Or if it's on your lot, you'd have to
Yeah.
maintain it.
Yeah, that would probably be the easiest, just,
Yeah, I mean, I just was asking the question. I just want to throw it to you because it was confusing when I read through it initially, and I don't know how he's clarified it,
Yeah.
whether it's still confusing or not, but,
Yeah, that second paragraph in the O&M was a general,
yeah.
as things change ownership, whether it's even the office building, it's just, the O&M goes with the new owner. It was more of a general thing, so for this specific site, I think just, it'd be best to reference whatever BMP is on that parcel as the responsibility.
So if you look at it again, keep that in mind and see if there's anything that pops out as far as needing to condition it in any way.
Okay.
So we have a couple of hearings on that night. So the earliest would probably be, I would say, almost putting it to 8:30, just knowing that we're going to be running a couple of those. And except for that, it's quite possible that, I don't know, if we're going to get the first two even in, so.
What do you have?
But, well, we've got DPW, we've got Broomfield that's been continued, Vickery, and then Webb is a new one. That's pretty easy one. I mean, I guess, and the other thing would be, if we don't have any more questions, we're just going to go through draft order, whether Mark, you might not have to come if you didn't want to, but available. If we have
Yeah,
questions,
whatever
hopefully
time.
that'll come up along the way. So you want to continue it to 8:30 or so?
Yep.
Just continue, and then I'll have him sign that. Continue form.
Thank you.
Mark does- I'll let this take a second.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up we have bridges and boardwalk maintenance.
Sounds like me.
Sounds like that's you.
So, Gordon, come on up. So I asked, and Gordon offered to come because the trail committee's been talking about some improvements that we need to make to some of the boardwalks and bridges. And Gordon offered to help do some, like the wetland filings for it, so either a request for determination or a notice of intent. And as I was trying to think of the various areas that we need to do some work, it started to become more than just like one simple one or one project here and there, and they weren't necessarily the same. The standards might be different in terms of the design and so forth. So I didn't know if there was some way the commission might want to come up with any parameters that would help guide us as to whether, a request for determination would be acceptable or a notice of intent would be needed. Part of the, and just the overall, again, both firms are good for 3 years. And order conditions, if issued for a notice of intent, can be extended. So if, if we did it more of a general notice of intent, then that could be something that you wouldn't have to come back every time you were either maintaining or repairing, or, and then if it's new, so I don't know if there's lots of ways to look at it. Do you consider maintaining and repairing one type of application that you would think was okay, or if it was new, would you need a notice of intent? And if we have 5 new ones, do we need 5 new notices of intent, or can they be put in one application?
When the scouts do them, do we always require a notice of intent?
No, we've had them file requests for determination typically,
And we generally
and
say
then
negative.
when we've generally been able to make a negative finding, but I think, you know, it depends on, in the end, on what it's been, you know, how they've come up with it. So, you know, if they weren't altering any resource bank or land underwater with it, or, you know, vegetated wetland, or, you know, so it all depended. But since they, you know, part of the idea with the scouts was they were doing our work, but we wanted to give them.
I was myself in the same sentence as scout, you know.
Yeah, I know you do, but, so we wanted to get them involved in the educational aspect of it too, you know, so they went through the process, which
Right.
you
don't need
prefer
to.
not to do. So I didn't know, anyway, that's, and do you want to add more on that then?
No, it's just that, well, we've already done one, which was repair the boardwalk at, in Vaughan Hills.
And that was just the
But that
boards
was,
on top
it was
of
just
the
really
existing?
replacing the boards, but there
Yeah.
is more work needs to be done there. And then there were, I don't know what else to say really, there's a bridge needed where Scott Duhame had laid a few.
Right, I remember, I was on that walk.
Yeah, and you just have to,
The logs.
it's just asking for somebody to fall off and
Yeah.
hurt themselves really.
So the repairs though at Vaughan Hill, so that didn't even come before us at all, we just.
No,
Okay.
you know, and they just, again, there were like 4 boards that had broken.
So something
You know.
like that, is that what we typically do, and is there anything wrong with continuing to do that? Or just-
Well, I would say, you know, in this case, you know, I did know that Gordon was going to, the other people, you know, the trail committee was going to do it. But other cases, like at Bower Springs, we were there last week, and someone, unbeknownst to us, has repaired the slats, you know? So there are some people who take things on themselves. So regardless of whether it's our project or not, some people are doing that kind of thing anyway, and I just don't even know.
Okay.
As is the case where some people are putting in log bridges, you know, or corduroy. And so the trail, I think with the trail committee, we're trying to get to the point where people know that we have an active trail committee, we can give some guidance, you know. And so like the former trail committee, I don't know, what was it, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and then they put together a nice sign manual, you know, and so that manual was good. And I think, did I pass it out to all of you guys? Yeah. You know, so that gave a lot of guidance as to, you know, how you're going to mark the trail and what you want to take out with you and all that kind of stuff. So this committee might get to that next level,
I think we
you know,
might, yeah.
with more on the maintenance and management and that kind of stuff.
So I guess you know some of the places in Vaughan Hill where we've walked through all that wet stuff.
Right.
We might choose or decide that the right thing is to put some boards down.
Right.
Does that mean we have to come here and sort of go through this for every set of duck boards in Vaughan Hill, or do we have some general thing that we can go through?
Yeah, so that would be new though, new stuff.
It would
like
be
that,
new.
not-
In some of those cases, it would be new.
Yeah.
Some would be new, and as I said, some of it's people are putting down, like when they did the land stewardship walk from Harvard. I'm told that, what's your name, Sisson?
Oh, Wendy.
Wendy
Yeah.
Sisson, you know, carried a log with her, so because she knew where they needed to put something down. I mean, I think she took it back out, you know, but again, it was like, you know, I mean, people are doing that every day, you know,
Right.
and we don't necessarily see it all the time. So it might be new in the sense, like, you might go and somebody's done it, but you don't know when they did it. So now is it old?
Yeah, now it's all,
Yeah,
so
you
it's
know.
not, yeah. Well, I don't know. Some of this stuff to me seems so minor and for the better of the wetlands, because you're keeping people from stepping in them. I want to,
Yeah.
my thought is to try to make it as efficient and easy as possible for people like Gordon to do this work. And I'm not sure what that means then to me, to say that they don't need notice of intent, they just come to an RDA. Is that what you say, or they don't need anything? or what?
No, I think you need something. I don't think you can necessarily, I mean, you know, there are people who are going to do it, so what are you going to, you can't take care of that, right? But I think you need to form some kind of guidance, you know, and if it's really that the trail committee's coming up with the guidance for you, I just didn't know if you could give the trail committee any guidance as to things that you would want to, you know, before we started to try to develop anything. You know, so one example that, again, that Gordon and I and you and I have talked about, and maybe others, Welsh Bog.
Yeah,
You know,
that's a
so,
big
Yes.
one now.
You know, that's a
big
pond,
one.
it's got a bog around it, so it's got a unique community,
Yeah.
and, you know, many of us would love to be able to get out there to observe it, you know, so, you know, again, in that case, you'd want to have it high enough, you know, over the plants, you know, and not so wide that you're shading it,
Yeah,
you know, but so.
definitely. Something like that, we definitely want them to come before the commission, right? I mean.
Right,
that's
but
good.
so what about a stream crossing where then they're, you know, they're putting the boardwalk into the bank, you know?
Right.
Like replacing the one that you guys walked on the other day,
Scott Vickers.
you know, where again, it was, they put the logs in, but now you're gonna actually build a structure.
Yeah.
Is there a plan, like for the year, you know, here are the 15 trails, and these are the things we should work on, and then maybe quarterly,
Basically-
after spring, summer,
Basically, it's a
winter?
bunch of volunteers who,
Yeah.
who, when they got some time, will do something.
Yeah.
I think. So there is no real plan.
You know, so the idea is like to make it as efficient as possible so that it does, so when somebody says, oh, I want to volunteer, you know, we have a project that, yes, they can go and do it, or we need to have it reviewed, you know, or, you know, so we can time that. So it's really getting guidance from you guys, you know, so if somebody, like, we were at Bower Springs for our trail committee walk last week, and Beaver have been working there pretty steadily, and it's getting wetter and wetter. At least I hadn't been on that trail in a long time, so to me it was much wetter than I had seen in the past, and there was a lot of new activity, you know, a lot of big trees coming down. So really that trail, you know, we're looking at it from the trail committee saying, you know, that might end up having to be a seasonal trail. On the other hand, it might not be seasonal because it may be wild beaver there. It's like, it's
So
either.
then it may not be seasonal because.
It may not be seasonal because there's wild beaver there, it's always gonna be wet, you know, so do we,
Well, when it's frozen. That's the only time I go in there, because it is so wet all the time, for the past few years, as far as I know.
yeah, so the question is though, so people are, if people are using it now and not frozen, which this evidently a person went in with their horses
Yeah,
and
it's all wet, yeah.
and they broke through the board, you know, so do we build it, do we build it bigger and longer? And so then if,
Or
like,
bigger.
so most of them are like 10, 12 foot lengths, you know, typically, right? And then, but, you know, I've been on, and you've probably all been on, you know, boardwalks that meander through the marsh, you know, and you've got something that's
There's
more
one of those in
than
Bow.
10 feet or 12 feet, and so then you get into something that, you know, is much more extensive. And in, like at the case in Bower Springs, right now you have a 10 or 12 foot one, and then you have another 10 or 12 foot one, and then you have another
That's
one.
right, there's a
So
whole
now
thing.
it's almost to the point where you're getting into like a 100-foot, you know, boardwalk, but it's all been done piecemeal.
Right.
You know, so anyway, I'm looking for guidance so that I
Well,
can.
it sounds like it would be very useful to
Yeah.
have a set of guidelines that would say, for instance, for these kinds of projects, you don't have to come here.
Yeah.
And for these kinds of projects, you do have to at least present.
That would be
your
very
plan.
helpful.
Yeah, so Carol, do you have a recommendation of for which kinds of projects, a way to verbalize that, for which ones are so minor that they don't have to?
Not yet, no, I was looking for you guys first to see if you could give us some, if you had questions or comments or guidance that you wanted to make sure we took into consideration before we start to work on anything.
Well, it seems if they're going to fix things, existing items, and they're going to fix them the same, you're going to improve them, you're going to fix them, I don't see why they need to come for that. It's already there, they're improving it, they're doing a service. But if it's something new, then I would say that maybe a notice would be required. What's the new work going to be, and just, you know, a description, what's the scope, what's the expectation?
But so I guess the thing was that we were trying to avoid doing one notice every time you have a new one. You know, is there a way to do a more generic
How about
notice?
one for, can there be a generic notice per trail system? So if you're working on the Von Hill Trail around the pond, that, does
From
that make
when
sense?
looking
One
at it.
for that, and they can,
Well, so let me just ask, well, I know, I mean, so we also, the trail committee walked a lot of what we call the Moen piece of Von Hill. So the Moen piece has a stream and it has a trail that runs along the stream, and particularly in the spring, it's really difficult to not muddy it up and make the trail wider and go off the trail, you know, because it's just too muddy. So we decided, after we looked at it initially, to wait until the spring. Like, we flagged up where we thought it was really too wet, right? And then we're gonna look at it again in the spring. But so again, just from the trail, from our standpoint, we're kind of looking at, loops within the bigger loop. So I don't know if you would call it, the whole Von Hill system, because then you have,
I guess,
then you also have.
there's always going to be a judgment call there. I don't know that we
Yeah.
can verbalize something precise that's going to cover that. I mean, and maybe we would leave that judgment up to you, or just asking
The
us
committee.
asking us quickly rather than, because I guess just for that, knowing that trail
Well,
system,
we-
I would consider around the Beaver Pond one, and then
We
the Mountain
could-
property one, a
Right.
separate one. You know what I mean? Because they're totally
Yeah, but
different
that's what I'm
areas.
asking. I don't know how you would
Yeah, but I
say
don't know that we
one,
can
yeah.
really.
Is this something that, say, Janet and Gordon could work out offline and then
I was
present?
wondering, I was just thinking, we could say on the 3rd that we're planning to do this area or something, and just tell you we're going to spend some time in this area and report on the state
Right.
of the area, and then maybe discuss whether
Right.
certain things were needed in that particular area, just.
Yes, just thinking about that now, the trail committee thinks in
We
terms
could
of
say
the
we're
smaller-
working on Vaughan Hill and we've identified certain things in Vaughan Hill that need to be fixed. And we could say, well, this might need to be done, that's just a bit of a repair, blah, 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 and bring that along to the committee.
Well, I
Does that
think
make sense?
that's fine, but then what do we do about like these other more random ones,
You mean ones that are just convenient for me, like fixing the Scott Durham thing,
right.
I can do it because
Right.
it's near my house.
Right, or, or not even you, like Heinz brought up at the last meeting, over near him, there's the Harris Farm Trail, and there was a boardwalk there that he said, needed some attention, and some trees over it. Again, the trees wasn't a big deal, but if the boardwalk needed further, I'm not sure what it needed. I guess, and then Maria, to your point, so like, if for an example, at Von Hill, there is an existing boardwalk, but it actually needs to be improved, not just like the slats, but we kind of need a whole different system there we've been talking about. So again, I'm not, on a judgment call, I don't know whether that would be,
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with tweaking, because
Mhm.
whatever they're doing, they're improving it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
they're improving an existing structure
Yeah.
of some kind. So, I don't know why it has to have such formal
Mhm.
protocol for that.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, that one's really in the wet area.
Yeah, that,
What Maria said,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because the formal process discourages people
Well,
from
it-
just.
Yeah, and it's a
Well,
time,
it's
it's
down.
a time
Yeah.
sink, and, they're motivated to do it, and we
Right.
want to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think a heads up with new items, that, they want to work in this area, they want to do this. I mean, at least communicate to us, there's going to be activity in this area, this is something new, so that everybody knows about it. That's what I think is a notice, sometimes, that we're notified.
but not necessarily go right to a notice of intent. Is that
Right.
not
Well,
necessarily?
I mean-
Because even some of the new things can be very small
Right.
and minor. But the
Right.
Welsh Pond one probably will be a
I
notice.
have a suspicion that might be easier said than done, actually, given some of the ideas.
And because you're the link to both groups,
Yeah.
I mean, I think there would be less worry on my mind, because I know that you're working with them.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Well, it just depends on what we're expecting from the Welsh Pond thing. You could end up with a little platform going out into the bog with things, with sort of piles going into the
Yeah,
ground.
no, I was saying
You know,
that's a
that's a
bigger-
major project.
Oh, that is a major milestone. That would go the notice of intent route.
Yeah, right.
Than just the.
Yeah.
Is it possible to get a list, maybe during a trail committee meeting? Everybody's gathered around, do an informal list, these are all the things we want to do. And then figure out which are small projects, lump those together as what Maria's saying, they're things we'd like to do, we'd like to get there, but here are the ones
I
that
think
are
that-
bigger projects, and then maybe somehow figure out an RDA or.
I think that's a good idea when you're doing what we've been doing at Vaughan Hill, where essentially we've said, okay, we want to tackle all the trails in town. And we'll start with Vaughan Hill, and we'll concentrate all our efforts on Vaughan Hill, and then we can walk around and we can make notes and we can come back. But I think the problem that Carol has is just things I might want to do because I can do them, because they happen to be nearby. Do I need to fill out some sort of form and come along to you because there's something that needs to be done over on the Goulds land or something. And that's the question, isn't it, Carol?
Yeah, you know, I was trying to just see if we could have some kind of generic filing that would cover some of those things. And so maybe that is still something that we come up with,
Yeah.
just to cover it, you know, that, you know, where there's been an existing corduroy or a log bridge or, you know, something that needs to have immediate attention to make it safe, then those things will be done, you know. But we have it under the notice so that we have some guidelines and some, you know, some criteria that it's, you know, not altering, you know, bank or not putting pilings into, you know, the channel or, you know, whatever, some criteria. I guess that's what I was sort of thinking, is that we really should have something that gives some guidelines for some of those kinds of things.
So something like no new alteration to the bank, no new.
As long as you're not doing X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
you don't have to
You
show
can do
them.
it, yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, it would be like a blanket, you know, like, you know, so that, kind of like they do for, you know, vegetative management stuff along the roadways. You know, they file, they say what they're going to do generally, they don't say at every particular spot, you know, how it's going to be treated, but there's some general standards, you know, and that way you have something that people can use. I can give them the trail committee guidance because you've approved it, and then, you know, if we need to tweak it, you know, then that's again sort of within the order, you know, that they can, you know, make sure that it's not, you know, if they come up with a design that seems like it's beyond sort of that scope, then it gets triggered to, you know, either an amendment or new filing or something. I mean, I'd still like to leave the part where the scouts generally doing the request for determination, just because again, that was part of, it seemed like a really good part of the process for them to, part of their organizational. and-
Yeah.
So how do we come up with this list of permissible activities?
Well, the trail committee can sort of work
I think
on
the
that.
trail committee could come up with some suggestions and come back.
Yeah, and we can file a notice of intent, a more generic notice of intent. I just was looking for your guidance tonight because, you know, I didn't want to just do it on my own, telling Gordon like, oh, this is how I think we should do it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
And it seems like the more that's actually put, structured, written down, you might get more volunteers, because it's pretty clear sort of
Yeah.
what, you know, what needs to be done. People say, oh, okay, I live here, near here, or I want to get involved with that. Just having it on paper might be helpful.
I
Yeah,
think-
most of them don't want to do the meetings and they don't want to do the paperwork.
Most of us would
Yeah,
rather be out-
true, no,
would
I-
rather be out with a chainsaw and a
Totally
hammer and all the
understand.
rest of it, you know, rather than sitting.
There's the centralized planning versus,
You know, we're
Yeah.
basically a bunch of old retired guys who want to do something.
Play with their chainsaws.
Yeah.
Play with chainsaws.
All right, well, do you feel like you want to do any of that discussion with Gordon and I, or shall he and I start with it?
You guys can.
Okay, so I think you and I will meet,
We'll meet.
you know, before, and then we can bring it back to the trail committee a little bit and then get some stuff filed.
Okay.
Okay.
We can move on to the next thing now. Okay.
Okay, so as we go to the next, Brian, are you gonna?
You're gonna recuse yourself.
way out in the water where that chainsaw is.
So next we have Century Mill Estates, Spectacle Hill Road.
Good evening.
Welcome back.
We return partially to the land of the living.
So, are you going to talk about?
No, I was going to ask if we could get an update on where we are, because those are the two things. It's the request for release of surety and the upgrade on completion of work in the resource area.
Yeah, Carol, we were kind of hoping you had heard from Brandon.
I have not.
Because we haven't heard from Brandon either. We tried to get him. And Eddie was away.
Yeah, so, anyway, so Jim and Maria weren't at the last meeting, but because Janet's recusing herself, we didn't end up having quorum, so we had no deliberation. I just gave an update on things.
Right.
And I guess, actually, there was, in addition to that, Road A crossing, there was also the retaining wall at the other detention basin that I think I felt like I wanted to have you make a decision on, because even though it sounded like we were all in agreement, I don't think we ever had actually taken a vote on that. And then at the last meeting, I did also update them that the enforcement order restoration area had been planted and everything but seeding, if I'm remembering that correctly now. So I think really the big thing is, from our standpoint, I really think the big thing is the Road A crossing. And so since the work didn't get completed by October 1st, you know, we had asked for them to come up with some plan as to what they were going to do there. And then at our meeting, I don't have the dates in front of me, but then at one of our meetings, Brandon came in with a sketch plan of kind of an idea that he had. And Jim and I met in the field with that and really felt, based on some of the comments we got at the meeting and what we were seeing in the site, that we needed it to be more than a sketch plan. It had to have some further information. And it was my request that it also go to Heritage Program and to Fred Hamway for their comments, since, you know, again, it was a stormwater conveyance in a sense. I wanted Fred to take a look at it, and because it was within the endangered species area, I wanted to get Fred's comments. So they both put together comments or questions, you know, and we haven't had any response to that. And so Brett actually called me last week, and you know, I said that we hadn't, I told him we hadn't had a quorum at the meeting, but that we also didn't have any response to the questions at that meeting. And, you know, I talked to him, I said, you know, if we just forego that whole plan, can we just, you know, would you be okay if the commission just said, let's just restore it back to the stream? You know, because I'm Fred's comments and Brent's comments, you know, I just, you know, we have an intermittent stream that's been designed for, you know, major improvements to it, and right now putting it into two, you know, pipes, I forget, were they 2 12-inch pipes, is that what it is?
Yes.
You know, to me, it just doesn't seem like it's going to satisfy some of the design that we're trying to get going, even though it's temporary to some degree. You know, like when would it get removed, you know, and those kinds of things haven't been responded to. But to me, it might be just simpler to say, let's just open the stream back up, you know, let's you know, not use that area, which I don't think is a huge burden, but Andy can speak to that, in the sense that he's working, you know, on the Road C, and I think we talked about that a little bit last week, that the last meeting, you know, that he'd be hopefully building houses along that area, you know, spending the winter trying to do that kind of stuff. I do know you have stuff on the far side of the stream, but there is access through Century Mill Road, and you know, anyway, I don't know where you want to go with it, but it's been since, you know, it didn't get completed since it was supposed to. It's almost, you know, if we wait another 2 weeks before our meeting, it'll be 2 months since we asked for, you know, a proposal as to how to handle it.
It certainly sounds like reverting it to a stream would be the most straightforward and least controversial in terms of technically dealing with the site. What other implications it has for other activities at the site are another story. Because you wouldn't be able to drive across that. how adverse would that be on operation?
It's, in order for us to prepare to build the culvert crossing, like, it's similar to the one we already built, the wetland crossing we already built. And I think you saw, it's a massive amount of material that gets filled in between the walls. In order to build it, you actually need to have half the material on one side of the culvert. Because once you put in that culvert, you can't get to the other side. So you have to have it, you have to have your stockpiles on both sides. So that was something we were planning on doing over the winter. Now, we were gonna crush rock on that side and stockpile half of it on one side, half of it on the other, so that we would be ready to build it, because the building season, as you know, in New England is really short.
Would that require crossing that?
Yeah, I mean...
Well, or going out to Century Mill Road and around.
I think, I'm just hearing safety concerns and how that might get thrown into this decision.
Safety of...
Yeah, if you're gonna have trucks,
Going around?
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, not to mention, it's
Well, they already have been
yeah.
for 7 years. I mean, whenever they've needed to. I mean, it's going to have an access coming out on Century Mill Road. They will be building that out as
I mean,
well.
from on a
There will,
practice.
sorry, there will be construction vehicles going both ways.
But are some of those-
Not generally.
Are
They're
some
not
of those
really.
trucks off-road,
Yeah, I mean...
so they're not generally licensed to drive on the
That's
roads?
correct. The type of truck, that you want to use in a rough terrain situation is an off-road truck. The wetland crossing we're talking about is basically in the very center of the property. So it's quite a distance to drive to Century Mill Road. And you couldn't, it would be very hard on a truck that's made to drive on pavement to go that distance off-road. You'd have to really improve a pathway significantly. Believe it or not, this equipment, breaks. It's not made, an on-road truck is made to be driven on the road, and when you use it off-road, it takes a lot of abuse. Not to mention that the cost in terms of fuel and time, and also, there is I guess you could weigh it environmentally too. I mean,
Well, that's all I'm weighing it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Personally, I just think it should have been done, when it was approved. It was supposed to be done by the end of September. And so if you had wanted to get all that material together, it should have been done. And at this point, I just don't see the benefit to the environment, in continuing to allow the traffic to go through there.
So everything is stopped in that area? Nothing's happening?
No, everything is still going on, if anything's going on. I haven't really been working over there, but maybe they have been driving vehicles back and forth. I'm not there usually to see that much. but-
one benefit to the environment, and it's probably, in my opinion, a bigger benefit to the environment, because what we're talking about driving over is solid ledge, currently. It's solid ledge. We're not driving over any wetland material. The area is...
The stream
But it was an
is across
intermittent
that.
stream, and it is an intermittent stream that has
Right.
important values that are no longer there.
Well, but the water can be, can...
Right, but the water, so we've
I'm not
had that
wondering.
plan now for weeks and weeks, and we haven't had the questions answered.
Well-
I guess my point is just that
I just got the email. I just got it today. Brent's comments, I never even saw until today. When did you receive them?
They were sent to Brandon on November 3rd.
I didn't, I got them from Alan today.
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah,
I
haven't
mean,
seen it.
Because you sent them.
But Carol sent it to me.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you've been communicating directly with Brandon. I can't oversee it if I don't know about it.
okay, well, he works for you, so I can't help that either. I can't tell him what to do, other than, that I did ask him several times, if we were gonna get responses. I haven't had anything.
I mean, he's a wetland scientist. Yeah, he was asked to come up with a reasonable way to button up that
Yep.
property. He
And-
submitted a design quite some time ago. We're talking about an area that's, 20 feet long and it's solid ledge. I mean, it's not,
Right, and nobody's been satisfied with the design yet, so I think that's the problem.
Well, Brandon-
I wasn't satisfied with the design, Heritage hasn't been satisfied with the design, Fred's not satisfied with the design, and nobody's responded to that, and it's been, in my opinion, it's been a few weeks, maybe you didn't see it, I don't know why that didn't happen, but...
and I mean, even at the last
but
meeting,
I
which was
guess-
2 weeks ago, that wasn't presented 2 weeks ago when we were here.
Well, I didn't present anything. I just said, yes, I did. I said we needed the response to the comments. At the very end of the meeting, before you left, I said, we need Brandon's response.
I don't recall.
It's on, yeah, because I
I mean, but I
actually
didn't
listened to it again.
I didn't see the email.
I didn't bring any of that up
Yeah,
because
no,
we
I'm
weren't
just saying, I
deliberating,
didn't know anything
know?
about it.
Yeah, well, I didn't know you didn't know. So anyway, my point is just that at this stage, it hasn't happened, and I personally feel that design has not been satisfied, but to a number of people, and that I think the better way at this stage would be to restore it back to the stream and not do the work in that area until the time frame that was agreed upon in the order.
And Brent said...
And Brent was fine with that.
Okay.
Can you read me Brent's email? Because it didn't sound like that was what he was saying.
No, I just talked to him about that last week. So November 3rd, he sent this to Brandon and to the Conservation Commission and copied Fred. The Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program of the Massachusetts Division of Fisheries and Wildlife received a preliminary sketch plan for a temporary culvert crossing of Road 8 titled Temporary, comment. The division has reviewed and the submitted information has the following questions and comments. What is the anticipated timeframe of the temporary Road 8 crossing will be used for, i.e. until the spring, May, or longer? Will the riprap pipes, construction road, and boulder wall be removed? What is the need for the riprap and boulder wall on what appears to be the upstream side of the culverts? How will the installation and use of the temporary crossing minimize impacts to state-listed species habitat? That's the big one in my mind. How will the areas altered by the temporary crossing be restored? And will the placement of fill, riprap, and a boulder wall affect the hydrologic connection between the two wetland areas? While the division is willing to approve a temporary stream crossing, we do have significant concerns regarding the current design and lack of clear detail the plan provides. At this point, it is unclear to the division how the temporary stream crossing design will minimize impacts to state-listed species habitat in their migratory, overwintering, and breeding behaviors. Therefore, the division's questions above seek to have the project proponent provide detailed information which will help the division understand the project timelines, need, construction sequencing, and restoration activities. The division respectfully requests the Bolton Conservation Commission to continue the hearing regarding this matter until the division receives the above additional information and can discuss the temporary crossing with the project proponent and his representatives. Any questions about what? Contact Brent.
So he said in the letter that he would approve it.
He said he was willing to if you could
Answer
answer
the
those
question.
questions. And the big question
didn't know-
I see
didn't know the questions
is
existed.
how is this installation going to minimize impacts to state-listed species habitat?
The question at the heart of all that has been, if two 12-inch pipes were big enough, why was a much bigger culvert arrived at?
Right. Well, the stormwater standards require a much bigger culvert. And part of the stormwater standard designs is to provide continuity between the wetland systems for habitat. So in this case, again, while the design, the temporary design, in my opinion, is to convey water, it's not to provide the habitat. And so
I guess I do feel like the temporary design, you know, again, it's temporary as he's drawn it, but it doesn't provide the same value and habitat continuity and
So
that it
Brad-
would if it was just opened up as a.
So Brad said he would approve something that provided the minimum continuity for the habitat, but he didn't really define what that was.
No, I don't think that's what he said. He
When the
said,
walls are-
how will the installation and use of the temporary crossing minimize impacts to state-listed species habitat?
Keep in mind, when the wall is up, you're creating a barrier. So by having the culvert, the high culvert in the middle, like if you're a deer, you can go under it.
Right.
These pipes don't create a barrier. So it's...
No, but the state-listed species that he's looking at are smaller critters than
No,
that.
no, I'm saying, but the reason you asked why is there such a big opening?
Well, no, not so much why there's a big opening, but if a big opening was appropriate, how is it 2 12-inch pipes could suffice?
Well, no, but the big opening isn't for water. That's what I'm trying to say. The big opening is for wildlife.
It's for both. It is for water, but it's also for
Right,
wildlife.
but
I mean, it's bigger, it's, you know, it's
Size of it is-
oversized.
the size of it
Not
is-
necessarily
So
just,
is Brent not worried about deer? Is...
no, he's with, Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program deals with the state-listed species.
But I mean, as far as, if you had the walls uplink and with no opening, or a 12-inch opening, deer couldn't,
Right.
they'd have to go around and climb up and walk over the road. With the culvert, large opening, not only deer, but smaller animals.
But unfortunately, we're not going to get the culvert until a couple of seasons from now.
A couple what?
Seasons from now.
Right. Spring. yeah.
So in the meantime, we've disturbed
Summer, really.
the passage so that some of the access to certain species is inhibited.
I don't know.
If we just leave it the way it is, or if we have a 12-inch pipe, then it's not as open to as much wildlife as it was.
Yeah, I mean, part of the concerns that I have, you know, is that the
I'm
way
not
it's
certain
been,
that's the case. I think
the way it was designed, you know, there would be a
Barriers.
salamander barrier
Logs
that would
on the
go in,
ground.
so salamanders
Critters
wouldn't be able to
crawl
go
over.
across the road. You know, they're in the construction phase, there's gonna be, you know, there was erosion control, so that would sort of keep everything. And so the erosion control, I mean, part of it is, again, we try to keep the erosion control there only to the minimum amount of time it's needed, you know, because there is movement and continuity. And so, you know, I just, again, I feel like, you know, it was supposed to be done in the end of September. We're now talking almost, you know,
But on the other
you know,
hand,
9 months.
like if you look at the
before-
permanent design here, there's actually a permanent barrier that's going to be put up on both sides of the road. There's a half pipe.
Right, because they get directed to the culvert.
Right, so that they can,
Right, but now you wouldn't have that for 9 months. So this whole season,
But
you know,
they-
you'd have equipment driving over within that whole road, potentially crushing stuff that gets through.
One of
or
the
doesn't
issues
get through.
that we have with planning board that they've mentioned a few times is the trucks on Century Mill Road. Adding to that by doing what you suggest is certainly contrary to what they're looking to have happen out there. It's been mentioned a few times, it's going to be mentioned tomorrow night when we go in and talk to them. So I would think that what you're suggesting is certainly contrary to what they're telling us they want, which is fewer trucks driving
Well,
on that
yes
main
and no,
drag.
because we don't, we're not saying that you have to go out on Century Mill Road. Andy's saying it because somebody asked the question, you know, what is this going to prohibit you from doing? And he says from moving material back and forth. He doesn't have to move the material right now because he's not working on that road.
But
So-
we were going to be working. We're not we haven't been working on the road for the past, on the crossing for the last couple months because it was closed down. But we have done work on have had work going on the other side of the property, crushing rock.
Then I had to put it this way, but if we don't come up with a solution for that crossing real soon, then you may not be working on both sides.
Well, that's what I'm suggesting you decide tonight. or you decide you're gonna put it off, which is up to you guys, but.
Well, if you can give us another couple of weeks, now that I'm, no.
I mean, it's ridiculous. This has gone on way too long. Yeah, October 1 was your date. What's the date today? The 18th?
Well, we
of
did submit a
November.
plan, and then.
And then what? And then you
And
had
then-
questions.
No, I
You
didn't
didn't
answer.
answer.
It was November.
You
on
dropped
Nov-
it.
On November.
It's been dropped.
I didn't drop the ball, ma'am. On November 3rd, we got an email that was sent to Carol and I guess Brandon, which I never got. I didn't drop the ball. I'm the owner.
Yeah, no. Well,
I
the
mean,
bottom line
I'm just
is,
a man trying to make a living.
Who's responsible for getting the answers to us? Is it you? Is it Brandon? I don't care. We just want the answers. I don't care if it comes from you or from Brandon,
know,
but
but-
it's somebody that
I know, but-
represents you.
Please don't punish me and hurt me because an engineer got an email on November 3rd that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah,
If
but
I
but
wanted
it's
to
your
punish you-
engineer. It's your engineer.
No,
You're
I-
responsible for the project.
I understand
The people
that,
that
but
work
I
for
was-
you.
We
I
have
mean,
been
so-
working with you for how many
becomes new.
weeks now past October 1? We've been trying to work with you on this, so please don't tell me that, I'm limiting you and I'm hurting you. We're trying to work with you and it's not working. Why? We're not getting the information that we need.
Well,
And now I think we've
you
reached
asked
a
us
point
to
where it's
s-
too late. It's too late in the season now to deal with this road.
Why?
Just a chance to get, it was
What?
supposed, the
All
work was
the
supposed to
I tell you one
stop
thing is,
2
the storms
months.
that we
All
had
the
yesterday,
weather.
I was concerned, we have an intermittent stream that right now is going over a road. I didn't get out to see the conditions of it yesterday, but we're starting to get the wetlands filled up and we're starting to get heavy storms. We need to have it addressed, and personally, I don't think feel like I'm satisfied with the design at this point, and that sounds like from the questions that the others have asked, that they aren't satisfied. So I just don't know that it's going to be answered even in 2 weeks. I think that the better way from a wetland and a habitat standpoint is to restore it back to what it was. It shouldn't have been altered if it wasn't going to get done, and it didn't get done, so it should be restored.
And I don't see why we have to keep dragging this out. We've really, I think, bent over backwards to come to this point in November to try to work with you to get this done. It's not working.
You should be the one benefiting the most by getting a solution implemented as quickly as possible.
The last,
And if that means ensuring that all the people who report to you operate as quickly as possible, then that's
at the
part of
last
your
meeting,
job.
I was under the impression, I was given the impression at this meeting that Carol was speaking directly with Brandon. And I had not heard that there was a problem.
Well, it's your responsibility.
Well, at the
Follow
last
up.
meeting, I said, and I just listened to it tonight, we need to get the responses from Brandon. And I did try to get information from him, and I got no response. So we're at it tonight, where I didn't even know, again, whether you guys were coming until this afternoon. So, there's nothing that I can help be more prepared for either. No?
Well, you could have sent a letter to.
I did send it to Alan.
You
I
did.
did, yeah.
Did I forward it to you?
Yesterday?
Well, and I sent him the
I got it
questions,
today.
I sent, well, I'm not gonna get into it. I've already said my piece. It's up to you guys, I think,
We've been able to take care of many, 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 many items. I think we're down to this one item. All the other work that needed to get done, did get done. I don't think we're having any problem in this location or in any other location on the project. At the last meeting, you reported after that very large rain event that the project was in very, very good condition. I know that the town's inspector wrote that in his report, that we had excellent, post-event conditions after that very, very large rainstorm that we had a couple weeks ago. And I don't see the urgency to all of a sudden do this when, give us another couple weeks. I'll take care of it now that I'm aware.
I feel the urgency because of the unknown New England weather. I've been nervous since October 1.
Well, but we've
And
had,
I think
we've
it's
had
just-
huge
it's too
rainstorms
late.
since November 1, and it's not having any negative impact. That's just the facts of the matter.
Well, the stream is blocked at this point, is it not?
No.
that
Not blocked.
passageway?
Not blocked at all.
How's it open?
It's open, it just doesn't, there's no banking, but it flows.
Well, there's erosion control in the way still. You haven't removed that, right?
No, but that's not blocking the stream, that's keeping the water clean.
Is it going under the
Well, it
road?
just, sometimes the hay bales can cause things to back up. I don't know from yesterday's storm whether or not water started to flow over, but I don't think, I think my feeling is that if we wait to get comments and we're still not in agreement with the design, then we're prolonging it for 2 more weeks. And so I guess since the design to me still doesn't satisfy a habitat standpoint at all to me, and maybe Brandon would be able to argue it to Brent, but I still don't feel like from a Conservation Commission standpoint, it would satisfy us. I just think we should do the other options, to open it back up to the stream.
And even if we get approved plan, if we're able to approve the plans in 2 weeks, then you can only start implementing them after they get approved. Whereas if we just restream it, we can just start that tomorrow. And we are already 2 months past. We were supposed to be buttoned up for the winter. I tend to agree that restreaming, I think, is our best option at this time. Is there anything else?
A lot of work got done, and say, okay, that's what we got done, and this one piece is just gonna have to wait.
It's a big piece just because we're not, in the previous meetings, we were, I was under the impression we were gonna be able to go back and forth.
I don't
Considering this is
believe,
solid ledge.
I don't believe we have said up to this point, get your solution implemented, or we're going to restore the stream with whatever effects that may have. This might be the time to say that. And rather than, at this point, immediately ordering restoring the stream, set a date not far in the future by which we either have an alternative solution implemented, or we do order that.
Would it be acceptable, obviously, Carol, you have some very specific things that you're looking for in a plan for this, for these pipes. Can the board seed you with the ability to approve?
They already did.
Okay.
They did. It was supposed to be approved by October 3rd, and if it wasn't approved by October 3rd, it would come back to the board October 4th. So it wasn't approved by October 3rd, and on October 4th, a plan was brought in that night to the
Right.
commission.
Right.
And the commission, we didn't accept it then.
Right.
So I'm not comfortable with that at this stage. Again, it was supposed to happen that way already.
Well, it wasn't that a plan wasn't provided, it was provided but not accepted.
Right, and then it was brought back again, and, after nothing provided in advance to anybody, so nobody had a chance to really look
I
at
thought that
it.
the reason why we gave the plan to Natural Heritage was that, generally speaking, the plan was acceptable, because otherwise, what was the point of sending it to Natural
No,
Heritage?
I don't
For
have any
comments?
idea why that would have been the case. The
But
point
why
was,
would we send a plan to Natural Heritage if you...
To get more comments. We wanted their comments on it.
Yeah.
I thought you were...
And the plan, it did come in after work was supposed to have already been stopped about that for the winter. I mean, it was already supposed to be done when we were getting the plan for how we could button it up for the winter. And we did extend some things out because they were close. This was the button-up plan because it really wasn't close. And now the plan isn't even that close. And we are, again, 2 months past that.
I'm not really sure what it is that you're looking for to button this up. You had a wetland scientist prepare a plan that he thought was reasonable.
That we have questions on. So we need answers to those questions.
well, I'm just saying, I don't think it satisfies us, me, in terms of the continuity for a habitat area. Brent can have his own opinion about state listed species, but in terms of continuity of the stream and, providing, 2 pipes are not going to provide that same kind of conveyance for, letting small animals, whether it's frogs or whether it's salamanders that aren't state listed, or whether it's other reptiles, that are trying to get through that. I just don't see that design working that
What
way.
about if we eliminated the pipes and just hammered out in the rock a trough?
the
With-
stream,
with-
that's what I'm saying,
with a-
open up the stream.
With a steel,
With a steel, put a steel plate
steel
over
plate
it.
over it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure about that yet, because, again, then we'd have to figure out the barriers.
There's still a timeline issue that sort of,
This is
keep
all-
talking about,
it's one
okay, what
day's
about
work.
this, what about this, but
I'm just trying to find out, you
Yeah,
know, what.
opening up the stream to its original condition, I think, is the first thing we need to do. You know, and if we can get that done and we can look at it from another perspective as whether we could consider allowing other vehicles, I think that's another stage. But,
If
you know,
it were open to its original dimensions, could it be bridged by a steel plate?
I think we'd have to look at it.
Yeah.
And we'd have to look at what the impacts would be during certain seasons as well, you know, during the spring, you know, is that something that's going to be of concern? Maybe in the winter, it might be something, it would be okay,
Is the
but maybe
steel-
in the spring, it wouldn't be, you
Is
know,
a steel
maybe.
plate possibly affecting the habitat?
Not the steel plate, but the traffic, you know, the equipment going over it. You know, so if you're going to have equipment coming through and you have this stream opened up, you know, and so you've got stuff along the edge of the stream or stuff hopping around, we'd still have to think about that. I mean, I guess, as I said, if, I would be willing to consider it during the winter, but I think, you know, as soon as we're talking about the middle to end of February, depending on the change in rain and change in temperatures and stuff like that, when stuff starts moving, I wouldn't think it would be good to have equipment going through there.
Keep in mind, this is solid rock, right?
Yeah, keep in mind, there's a huge pieces of equipment coming through where, you know, there's going to be, there should have been a stream crossing already.
Would you be planning to be moving and stockpiling through February or after? Or would you be done well before then?
I mean,
Or could you be done before?
I thought we were going, I thought we were headed towards creating a way that we were going to be able to use it continuously. So I had not planned on trying to get it done by a certain date because I wasn't aware that was something that was important for you. But,
You may want to try and work up a plan that gets that stuff on both sides before the end of February. Because that's beginning to look like the best solution for all concerned.
so open it up now, and then in February revisit some sort of plan.
I would say open it up now, stabilize the bottom with the type of material that it came out of it, you know, probably similar stones as to what you have in the bottom and up in the top, so that it's not, you know, rip-rap, jagged stuff, but stuff that was more rounded, or we look at whatever its existing conditions on either side of it. Let the water start flowing through there, and if it seems as though it's suitable, you know, once it's done, to allow the, a plate to be over it, you know, maybe for the winter, again, before there's migratory changes, you know, we consider that. And maybe Brent will have an opinion in terms of the time frame as far as state listed, and that would be helpful to us as well.
That's fine. Seems like a reasonable way to proceed at this point. Do we need to have a ruling on that? Do we need to make a motion on that?
Well,
Or
I
is it
think,
just-
yeah, I think, I mean, unless there's.
we have I'd like just think to add, because I didn't expect this, we do have a stockpile of material that is on the other side now. But I have a couple days to move it.
I don't have a problem with that. You just moved it over there a couple weeks ago.
What's that?
You just moved it over there a couple weeks ago, didn't you?
No, it was rock that was crushed on that side.
Oh, because I thought you told us when we were on the site visit that, you know, up on that hill, that you'd moved some stuff over to the other side. A couple weeks ago, I thought you said you did that.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with
I think
that.
that's fine.
Yeah.
You like 2 or 3 days, like by the end of this week?
As long as the weather's okay.
It's supposed to be sunny, I think, the rest of the week.
Yeah, cold but sunny.
So I guess really procedurally, we're kind of at the place where, let's see, I have to look at the order, I guess, a little bit, see if there's anything. I mean, this was a schedule, right? So they didn't complete the schedule that was part of it, you know, so in the order we asked for a schedule and it didn't get completed, so I'm not sure, I mean, I think that there needs to be some agreement, you know, otherwise, if it's not by agreement, then the only other option is to do it through enforcement, and I don't think anybody really wants to have to do that again, but that is, you know, so if we're not agreeing to it, then that's how I would think you'd have to do it. So I guess that's the question. Are we agreeing to open up the stream? And are we agreeing to do it within a certain time frame?
Well, you're telling me to, I don't have a choice.
Well, I know, but rather than doing it through an enforcement order,
I know,
you
I mean, we're accepting your decision.
Do we agree we can cross it through at the winter, right?
But I'd like to look at it once they get it opened. I think, you know, myself and Jim, you know, to see whether or not that seems satisfactory. I'd like to still get Brent's comments on using, crossing it with a steel plate or not, you know, and if that's the case, what would, you know, does he have any time of year constraints that he would recommend from his end? And then if he doesn't have a specific one and he says the same sort of thing, like, you know, need to look at when the weather changes again. Because like when you think of the migratory change, when especially the salamanders are moving out of the higher grounds and moving through the wetlands, it varies every year. Sometimes you get a warm spell in February, and sometimes you don't get one until the end of March. So it's variable.
As long as you don't want me to go take a look at it next Thursday.
Be busy watching football next Thursday.
I never watch football.
Really?
Oh.
I eat turkey though.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, well, but none of us will be looking at
I'm gonna
that.
do that in New
So,
Hampshire.
so you're saying, Andy, you think by the end of the week, you can have the rock pile moved over to the other side?
Yeah.
And then when can
Well,
we-
wait, today's Tuesday.
It's our Tuesday night.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Just, is my next Tuesday okay, or does that make a difference?
Well, I guess I'm just wondering when you can get started on opening the stream. I mean, that's the thing that we want to see happen, so we need a deadline for that.
I mean,
First you said a few days, so I'm just asking,
yeah,
is
no,
a
I
few
just
days is fine?
don't
Or
want to cause myself
Right,
problems.
right.
No, but
You know,
just-
you'd be surprised, you know, you have equipment and you go to use it and it breaks.
Yeah.
Heavy equipment breaks. I have a loader that's broken right now, an excavator that's broken right now, and my crusher is broken right now. So but my trucks are working. But I am down an excavator, so I can't, you know, so for me to get it done like tomorrow, I'd have to pull one of my excavators
Right.
that's currently trying to finish the road and get it paved off what it's doing. So a couple extra days, if it doesn't make much difference to you, it would be very helpful.
So how about by Friday? Does that seem doable?
But
Black
a week
Black
from
Friday?
No, this Friday.
No, that might be tight. That's tight.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's tight. That's the point.
About how many days do you think would it take to get the stream opened?
I can't imagine it's a big, it's open now. You
Right, right.
basically want me to restore it to what it looked like.
Yeah,
And you want me to put back the material that we took out,
right,
put it back there,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Would
It's
next
such a
Friday?
small area.
Would
it's-
next Friday
I
be
just
all
know
right
it
for
took
both?
you when
though?
you were hammering out the trench, but I know you said that was a lot deeper, you know, but that took a long time, so, and again, if equipment breaks, you know, and I don't know how you did it, what kind of piece of equipment you're gonna use
To do what?
to open the stream, because you have to hammer some of that back out, or you're just gonna
Oh,
use
no,
it
no,
in the
there's
back?
nothing, there's nothing to, there's nothing to hammer back out. It's basically just taking the material and placing it to.
So you're just using a backhoe?
Yeah, it's not a lot of work.
So by next Wednesday, we could?
Yeah,
look at it?
yeah, and I'll be able to have all my trucking done and have that done by next week.
That would be fine,
Okay,
That's fine.
yeah.
I can be there.
Yeah, no, that's helpful.
They'll let me cook the turkey.
It's amazing how much the heavy equipment breaks. Well, it's doing very
Okay.
rough work.
So, since we've got a whole bunch of other things still, can we move on to, did anybody have,
That's the 26th.
Do we at least need to resolve on a resolution somehow?
No, we just came to an agreement.
Okay.
That way otherwise,
Yeah, but-
we could do enforcement.
So, just to finish up on that other retaining wall that they wanted to modify and remove, and they have been actually working towards that. So in the field, they actually put stakes, where the toe of the slope was gonna be, and they've been pulling things back, which I haven't seen, I didn't go out there last week, so I haven't seen it since a couple of weeks ago, but that's what they were working on. And so I didn't have any problem with them removing the retaining wall. So I think you should just, that should probably be a motion that if
Yeah.
you're in agreement, that you agreed that they can revise that plan.
We did.
What detention basin was that?
We did revise it, and I gave you.
You gave us a
To
revised
accept-
plan,
to-
but
yeah,
accept the revised
We can
plan.
make a motion to accept the revised plan concerning the insertion or the removal of a proposed retaining wall on the slope.
And do you remember offhand the name of that
Parcel.
detention, number of that detention basin? Okay, so I'll put that in the minutes because we know where it is. It's on the
Thank
far
you.
side of the crossing
It's
of
the one
Road C.
closest to the car.
Thank
Yeah.
you. So that we allow that, amended?
No, I think you made the motion
I
already.
think I
So
already
let
did.
somebody second it.
One second.
Second.
There you go. All those in favor?
Aye.
The planning board voted on it too.
No, good.
Okay.
So then last meeting, Andy had asked to present his schedule of release for some of the different items that were in phase 4, is that right, phase 4?
Yeah.
And so Andy, just one thing, you had offered to send it to me so that I could send it out to others, and I said, oh, I can scan it. I did scan it, I sent it out, and it really didn't scan all that well, so I'm not sure that they got to see it very well. But I do have the copies that he provided, so I have those.
I have some copies.
All right, so Jim, I don't know if you got one. Yeah.
I also brought.
This is what we had last week, right? Yeah.
Yep. And I also brought, just, because you actually thought it would be good for everybody to have. This is the first page of what I just am handing out is a summary of what the plantings cost for the wetland replication and all the ORA's restoration areas for the entire phase.
But just the plants, right? So not the labor and not the material, as far as like, I don't know, if they probably didn't have to add, well, loam on the Aura, they didn't have to add anything.
No, well, because you're
Yeah, they
you're
replace it with
replacing,
what they have, yeah.
you're replacing the.
So just labor's not included in here then?
Right.
Just- Okay.
Just labor. So, anyway, so that, and the bills are right behind it.
These are the plantings that were just recently done?
The ones that say done are done.
Done last month.
Yeah, and then, but this is for the entire phase 4. So this involves our wetland replication and 4 Aura restoration areas.
Okay.
Okay? So, I don't know, it may be.
Andy, let me just, I didn't bring the plans
Yeah.
over, I should have. When you go up Road C, and then you go to that back detention basin, the one furthest from the wetland
Yes.
crossing, does that have any Aura restoration? Okay.
Yeah, that's Aura's, I think it's 6.
That's not done then? You have 6 done.
Excuse me,
so-
5.
5 to be done, okay. So just to, I guess, summarize from the last meeting, right, there, in the original schedule that's attached to the order conditions, there was an amount of money that Andy would request to be released just prior to pavement. And when I looked at that with him, I came up with, I think it was 60,000 something, let me find out where that was. Yeah, 60,000. And, actually, let me just find. So then, at the last meeting, Andy brought to everyone who was here, that there's some areas that he would like to have the commission consider additional releases for, because either when he was putting the cost estimates together, either they were higher than he anticipated because he's just finding, and that's why he was given the cost of the plantings, I think. Or there's some places where he felt like, wetland replication has been completed. It hasn't gone through the growing seasons, but all the work, the effort and so forth has been done, so how come no money could be released? And then, is there another area that you had brought up like that? I think those are the main
you
things.
generalized it really well. I mean, if you look at column U, for example, at that point, I believe all the work is done in the 67, you'd still be holding $67,500, which would basically be in case some of these plants died, right? So buying all the plants is $11,000. And the schedule that we have in place, you'd be holding almost $70,000 in case 11,000 in total plants die. Now granted, yes, you do have to plant them, but that's a pretty minor thing considering these are plants that are this big. That if, you get 20 of them that die, one person can go out there and in half a day replace them.
So really, it's more of a policy type of decision, because all of our orders of conditions that we've issued have been, and I'm bringing it up as a policy, because all of our order conditions have had the same language since we've been requiring surety. And it's been that everything goes through a growing season, and then we get a report, and then we consider whether or not we're going to release, those funds or not. And so, again, and so I think if you were to, I just would say, if you're going to make an exception now, then you would want to think about that for future orders, how you're going to want to have that worded, and what you're going to be looking for. What I said, you weren't here at the last meeting, but we don't have any as-built information, and we don't have a report at this point on, the replication restorations.
I'm not even sure why we would deviate from what we normally do.
Oh, because if we thought it was a better way to do it. That's a good reason.
Well, it's not clear to me that this is a better way to do it.
That's a different question.
I mean, I don't see why we should treat this any differently than anybody else who comes before the board.
Perhaps we may treat everybody
Well, I'm not
else
saying that you should
differently
treat
after
me.
this.
I'm not saying treat me differently. I'm saying that what we did doesn't seem to make much sense. Now that you have the actual numbers involved.
But these were estimates, these weren't based on
This was done.
actual.
Right, and I think that's why Carol used the term change in policy rather than exception. Because if we decide that it makes sense to say that we're only holding money for the work that could remain, that we would continue to do that in the future as well.
We're not asking you to go unsecured, but this is oversecured in certain respects.
And so how much are you asking for?
Well, I was
Well,
just.
before we get to that, I think, before we get to that again, the concept is, if you were going to consider that release, after the first year, we get a report, and the report is really on the success of the plants. But, and so I'm just throwing out, one thing that we haven't been getting is we haven't been getting as-bills. So what I had said at the last meeting was that sometimes there needs to be some fine tuning, and sometimes you can see that because of the plant's success, or you can maybe see it in the as-built because you've got that, micro, they've done they've surveyed the points, they've surveyed lots of little spots throughout the whole thing to be able to show you that they've got the elevations correct. So I guess my initial feeling is that if you were to deviate from the policy that we've had or how we've established it, that you should just think about that, what are you going to base your decision on?
Right.
Are you basing it on just that the work was done, or do you want something that tells you it was done correctly and it's going to be successful, So that's, again,
Which we really don't have an idea of right now.
No, and they did the work, visually it looks good, you know,
Yeah.
but I can't tell. I mean, I've
Right.
seen it hold water in places, you know, I think, you know, we modified some things in the field by leaving like some big boulders in the middle because it was natural topography, and we really thought that that might kind of help the way that whole system was gonna function. So, I mean, again, visually, I think they did a great job with it, you know, but I don't have any, I'm just sort of throwing it up for not, and again, not Andy so much as,
Right.
you know,
General.
the general policy, you know, because somebody else might not do it, or we may not have the same oversight, you know, and so what do you got, you know, what would you be looking for to satisfy?
I think whenever we ask for surety, we're talking about what would ensure a certain risk from the point that we're asking it. And I think now it's appropriate to say, okay, how has the risk changed? And how can we be assured that the risk is diminished up to this point?
But not on just this project, I think you need to think of it in general,
Right.
when you would
Oh,
say that.
I believe I've already said that I think if we change our thinking in that regard, that it would be going forward. It wouldn't be just for this project, it might start with this project. But if we did this for this project, we would, and if we thought it was a good, a better policy, that we would continue that policy.
Right. So, along with the risk, what how would you satisfy that? How would you, what would you be looking for to help you to know whether you have any risk any longer?
It seems that the as-built would be appropriate, and giving it a year, because sometimes you're going to be small plants, shrubs, sometimes it's going to be a tree. You plant it too late in the fall, which is kind of where we are here. We don't know what's going to happen in the spring. You could lose 3
Right.
trees, and there's a couple $100 to $1,000 that basically a commission's stuck for.
Oh, no, we're not asking you,
No,
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
we're not asking you to go without surety.
We're not asking.
Oh, no, not at all.
Release all of it.
Oh, no, no.
We're just saying that,
Like 1.5 times the cost. I mean,
Well, I
you know.
I just think, you know, from a commission point of view,
Mhm.
we should try to keep it as easy for ourselves as we can.
Right.
This is the policy that we have in place. We apply it to everyone that comes before the board.
But I don't think they're asking for release on work that's already been done. I think you're asking for release on over surety.
No, they're asking for
If
release.
that-
of what's
if that has
been
been
done.
done.
it's both.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's diminished risk
Right.
on work that has been completed.
Yes, and as far as the, as,
But it's nebulous, the diminishing
Yeah.
risk. It's hard to measure.
what's,
Well, that's part of the question that we have is what kind of measurement would we be satisfied with?
Well, I think the current measurements that we have, which is the as-built plans and a year of growth.
even if with the year of growth, though, I guess what I'm saying is, if everything died, this is what it costs to put plants in.
If
Not
everything
everything's
died
gonna die
and the
anyway.
hill fell down,
In the what?
and the hill fell down,
Right.
then it would be appropriate.
Oh, the hills can't do that.
Well, the
Well, that's part of the
plants,
question.
the plants
What hill are
alone,
you talking about?
Well, the slopes, the aura
All
areas
the
adjacent
grading
to
that was
it.
done, is that going to get undone?
I don't see how it could possibly.
Well, that's what we're talking about here.
Right.
because it's not just the plants, it's the plants. I mean, the surety is for the plants, that's the policy, but if you had to replace the plants, it's a lot more than the cost of the plants.
It's not a lot more than the cost of the plants. It isn't. I mean, first of all, I mean, what generally happens here is that, you know, you have a factor of death of plants that is allowed. So I think there has to be a 75% rate of, is that what, it's
Under the Wetlands Protection Act for replication, it's 75% success.
success rate. So.
Or no, actually, it's not 75%, success, it's coverage, it's a whole coverage, it's not just success, it's coverage.
But there's some death that's allowed. So I guess another way of looking at it is you sort of plant more so that you're ensured you end up with the amount that you want. So some may die, and if some do die, there's a range that's allowed.
Right.
If you get below that range,
Attrition.
right, then you might have to replace them. But it's not $67,000.
We're holding $67,000 surety.
For what?
For the plants.
Right.
What does it cost to replace all of the plants?
12 grand.
So we're holding
12,000
5
to buy
times as
them all.
much?
Right, it's not reasonable.
No, but
5
the,
times as much as
Well,
not.
I mean,
our
that,
customers.
somebody, did you sign off on that? Did you sign up on those numbers?
How much?
yes, he proposed the numbers.
I mean, that's your proposal.
I know, but I think.
Now you're coming back and saying I made a mistake,
Yes.
and this is our policy.
What? So you
Our
don't allow
policy is that we
mistakes?
never correct anything?
No.
Well,
but
so
release
there's two
surety,
things.
we
One
have
is that you don't
also-
have to decide any of this tonight. He's bringing
Right,
you this
right.
idea. It's getting late. We've got a lot of other business. I mean, I do think that based on what's existing and what was approved in the order conditions, he is due back the $60,000 that is shown in the schedule. The other stuff, again, I think it is something he's bringing to your attention, and I think it's worth everyone thinking about, but you don't have to think about it tonight, and you don't have to think about it and act on it at any time. He would like you to, because he'd like to get more money back. And I guess, again, I don't know that it's an unreasonable thing, but I think it's something to really be thought through, as to what it doesn't, and it shouldn't just be just this project, as he's saying, he's brought it to our attention that he feels as though, you've got the work done and the bulk of the work's done, so you don't need the 3 times the amount, you need something, but maybe not that amount, and we can think about it.
Yeah, but also, if you want to have us come on the agenda in 2 weeks, which I'd like to be on the agenda, I'll have the as-bills will be done by then too. So.
Well, I think they have to decide, what kind of stuff that they would want. But anyway, it is at least 75% of the surface of the replacement area shall be reestablished with indigenous wetland species within 2 growing seasons. And prior to said vegetative reestablishment, any exposed soil within the replacement area should be temporarily stabilized. That's the standard that I was thinking. But so in terms of the wetland replication, why don't I just read some of the other standards? The surface of the replacement area to be created shall be equal to that of the area lost. So the only way again, is through an as-built. The groundwater and surface elevation of the replacement area shall be approximately equal to that of the lost area. So you'd want somebody to be able to respond to that. They designed it supposed to be that, but again, if that's sort of that micro topography, you want to make sure it's working. Overall horizontal configuration and location of the replacement area with respect to banks shall be similar to that of the lost area. The replacement area shall have unrestricted hydrologic connection to the same water body, so again, sort of more of a design there.
Well, those are all standards you would have reviewed.
Right, I'm just letting them know some of them now, reminding them.
When it was designed, the plans were designed to meet all of that criteria, and the Concom reviewed it and approved the plans. So as long as we built it according to the plans,
Well, as long as we have assurances that it was.
Right, well, that's why we have the as-bills.
Yeah, so I don't know whether, you want to, at this point,
You had mentioned-
talk about any other specific
I'm sorry,
criteria that you would be looking for?
60,000 that would be available.
Right, I think that's what I know based on my review of the performance schedule is due,
Do you need a motion on that?
Did we?
Yeah, well, usually they just, in this case, I would ask for motion because it's separate, but we usually, it's
Yeah.
part of the signing of the.
Did we ever figure out there was a question on the maximum withholding for the button amount phases 3 and 4? So much was supposed to be.
Yeah, I didn't go through
per
all the
phase,
numbers
but
yet
there's a cap.
on that. I agree that there is a cap, and he's probably over on the cap, but I haven't actually figured out, I haven't looked back at that number yet. I don't have that in my head.
Authorized to.
Yeah, any amount over the cap, I would imagine we can do that. So do we need to make a motion for release of,
Sure, right, just not,
Yep.
yes, you can make one motion.
I'm trying to think how to phrase it best.
To release the surety according to the schedule that was approved with the order of conditions for phase 4.
I'd like to make a motion to release the surety for phase 4 according to the schedule that was approved in the order of conditions. And also instruct our agent Carol Gumber to release any surety money above approved caps. Yeah, on the button up of phases 3 and 4.
Actually, in total.
In total.
One,
Of
two,
the
three,
total
and four.
budget.
Yeah.
Total.
Carol, what is the amount
Phases.
that they should, that you believe is the amount to be released? Is that like that?
I only know the 60,000, I don't know the above on the cap. I have to
Okay,
look
can
at
they,
that. They just did.
Yeah, whatever,
So that would
to
be
give Carol
$60,000.
permission
Okay.
to release anything above
No, but
the
can we,
Rubicon cap.
can
The
the
60,000.
motion be, say, 60, just so there's no confusion over what?
Yeah, so release the 60,000, so Brian, a motion to release the
Release.
surety of 60,000 in phase 4.
Or-
As approved in the order conditions for release prior to pavement. Do you want me to do that?
So I would like to make a motion to release the surety of approximately $60,000 according to the schedule of the prior to paving released information in the
Yeah.
existing order of conditions.
Yeah, that works. And the above,
And
anything above. the
and
cap.
that we empower our agent Carol Govert to release any money in excess of the approved cap for the button-up surety of phases 1 through 4.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Are you voting or not?
No, I
No.
vote against it.
So the motion doesn't carry.
Motion does not carry? How does that, what's the dynamic here?
Well, we have a quorum of 4.
Do you have a quorum? Does it pass by?
I'll have to check, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think it passes by majority as long as we have a
If you have a
quorum
quorum.
voting.
Okay,
That's-
I'm
that
not
was
positive.
But
not-
I wanna
I can't
check.
say that for sure, but I
Yeah.
think that is the case.
Marie, is there any particular reason why you wouldn't want that money released?
I feel all uncomfortable with this. I don't feel comfortable releasing money
Okay. Ever?
right now.
That makes me uncomfortable. To be honest with you.
Okay.
Did we have any other, that you know?
I don't think so. I think we talked about everything that was on the agenda. Relation to work in the resource areas, compliance with the enforcement order, modification of plans, and request for surety.
Okay, thank you very much.
Happy holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you at 1 tomorrow, Andy. The next item is, when we had the project on the common driveway before us for Robert Pace Senior, they, in their application, had included 2 properties that are not actual owners of the common driveway. There's all these long fingers that are associated with those lots, and their consultant, when he put together the application, included some fingers that were not part of that. So when we issued the order of conditions, we listed the lots that had been identified in the notice of intent. And then I sent copies to all of those owners, and one of them called back and said, we're not an actual owner. You know, we don't want to have our lot affiliated with this order. So I called Robert Pace, and he was like, oh, yeah, I said, it sort of sounds like administrative, I could probably just make that change to the front page and blah, blah, blah. But on one of our forms, on our bylaw form, it lists them on all the pages, like including the signature page. And so since we were meeting tonight, I said, what, I'd really just like to just have it re-signed, and that way it cleans it up. So anyway, it's an administrative signature.
I see a reason for that.
But I will just tell you who signed it originally, in case that's of concern.
I don't sign it.
You can sign it for me.
So Janet, Jim, Brian, and Maria all signed it, so. Did you hear it? So Pace, so I'll just pass it around, but,
Oh, that was on the new version of the cases on the version.
yeah, it's just, it's the same order, no changes, just that I took out 2 addresses that were listed actually as parcels, it was under parcel numbers that were listed in the
Okay.
order, and it was incorrect because it was based on the notice of intent. They filed incorrectly.
We're just signing it.
Yeah, we're just re-signing it. They hadn't been recorded at the registry yet, so we'll do that. And then the state form doesn't carry forward the same way with all the signature, like the signature page doesn't list all of that, so I'm just going to change the front page on that one.
So are we at Craftsman Village?
We are.
Okay, Craftsman Village, Fulton Manor Sugar Road, 5 comments for the zoning board.
So, I believe I sent you some comments that we received from Niche Engineering, which was the peer review consultant for on the original proposal on Sugar Road for the original Bolton Manor project, which Mark O'Hagan and his partner are taking over and calling Craftsman Village. And they've been before us, Liz may not know, but they were before us, and the commission, after revisiting the wetland delineation and sort of the procedural requirements of an amending an order of conditions versus issuing a new order of conditions, agreed to allow them to go forward with an amendment to the order. Anyway, it's now also before the zoning board. They're also considering it as essentially as amendments to their existing comprehensive permit, and they were looking for comments from the commission. But when I got the peer review comments, there seemed to be a lot of things that, you know, they found didn't meet the stormwater standard, so they had questions about it. So at this point, I think some of what we would potentially say is that, you know, we need to see the responses to the peer review questions and comments for the stormwater design. And with that, I don't know if you all remember the layout of things, or if you have other comments that we want to provide. I think one area that would be helpful to comment on is there's land that is in the back of the development that originally in the first approved project had been slated for like a soccer field, I think.
Yeah.
And since,
Underwater soccer.
and so,
It was an accessible soccer field.
well, it's not inaccessible,
It would-
it's just,
no,
it's
it
not
was
very
just-
big,
yeah.
and they have to cut down a lot of trees, and, I'm just trying to see what's the best site plan. I haven't looked at these plans all that much, but, this is the back area.
Yeah.
And this wetland system kind of had an existing cart road that went across it with a culvert. The gas pipeline goes through the property, kind of divides everything up. So all the development, and I'll show you those other plans, is going to be up in this front area. So, you know, part of the question is, you know, what interest do we have? So certainly there's buffer zone and aura interest here. The pipeline, even though, you know, the pipeline goes across private property, it is a fairly wide open swath. Well, it is a wide open swath that if, with approval of other owners, you know, we could potentially have more of a trail connection from that to Powder House. And I don't know how doable that is, but that's certainly an option. There are some wet spots that you'd have to cross over. The development, you know, is sort of done in these pods. You know, very dense, comprehensive permit type of, you know, development project.
And it's like shared sewage, right?
They,
Shared septic per
within the
pod,
pods, yeah. And I think they are also trying to eliminate the
Well, they're
public water
40B too.
supply.
They're 40B too, so that
Yes.
they can be denser.
Right.
Right.
They did make some changes that we talked about earlier on. They pulled, there was some sort of dead-end road
Yeah.
that came around the back here. They've modified that, shortened that up. One of the things that it's not directly a wetland issue, except for it is in some cases, is they have 1, 2, 3, 4 curb cuts into the property. And this one at least is directly across from the wetland. But that's kind of where the existing entrance is now.
Where are those curb cuts again?
1, 2, 3, 4. You know, to me, that just seems like a lot, but if you go and sit across, if you sit in Colonial Candies and you look and you're like, boom, 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 I mean, it's really kind of breaks up that whole stone wall, and
Why do they need that?
I'm not gonna answer that, I don't know. But I think those would be some comments that I would suggest that we consider talking about.
Just for clarification, so this, because I was thinking, where on Sugar Road, because there wasn't a number, I figured the number wasn't assigned, so that's where it is across from Colonial.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I know.
There is-
That's
there is a
it's
sign
on the
up
corner,
there.
117.
Exactly right.
Okay.
There is a sign up there about future development, whatever. So
Yeah.
that'll tell you where it is.
Yeah, and there's a chain across the entry. You know, so I mean, I think, you know, I shouldn't keep saying, you know, but there is a big detention basin that's within our jurisdiction from this wetland across the street, very steep slopes, very steep grading that's going to occur over in here. At this stage, I would probably just recommend that we say that we have, you know, that we met, that we've revisited the wetland delineation, that we are staying with the existing line, you know, that was approved in the original order of conditions, and that we have agreed conceptually to amend the order of conditions, so long as, you know, nothing is any more, you know, different than what has been shown in these not for construction plans, that, you know, we'd be interested in seeing the back parcel at a minimum protected with a conservation restriction, but, you know, if it could be granted, it may not be able to be segregated out, so I mean, I guess a conservation restriction and/or gifted, you know, as conservation land, unless you think there's some other use that you want to recommend.
So this connects to where the library used to be, when it was there temporarily? There's like
Yeah. So the complex that,
yeah, that's like right here.
I didn't.
Yes.
There was a
Yeah.
library?
Yeah.
well, for a while when they were moving, when they were redoing
right.
the old
Yeah,
library.
there's a bank and
I wasn't here.
dentist.
Yeah,
Dentist
right,
office.
afraid
But they don't own that parcel,
Right.
you know, so I don't know that there's, even though there's kind of like, there's almost like a little connection, you know, right back through here. When you're standing there, you're like a hop, skip, and a jump over the stone wall into the big field. But, and maybe that, at some point, that'll be protected, who knows, or be developed, or, I'm not sure. what the
Now,
plan is
are
there.
those open areas, do they belong to, who?
This is all part of Craftsman Village.
Yeah, that's,
Oh, okay. So it's not like Century Mills where the open areas are belong to town?
No, they, so in the original Bolton Manor plan, there was a proposal to allow the town to build a soccer field here. And the public would have access over the one road essentially that was coming in to reach this area. I can't remember, I honestly can't remember if they were separating that out to gift it to the town or whether they were just allowing it to happen. I don't remember the details of that.
Yeah.
And so because I don't remember the details on that, I can't say what would make sense, but again, from our standpoint, protecting this area, you know, preserving it in its natural condition based on the density and the, you know, alteration of all of this would make
And they
sense, you
seem
know?
amenable to that too.
Yeah.
We're talking to them.
I'm just thinking of some of the issues we ran into at Century Mill where the lines, the boundaries between land that wasn't supposed to be disturbed and land which was going to be disturbed by construction, wasn't demarcated very clearly, and whether it needed to be here or not.
Yeah, I mean, that would be probably worth saying, that we would, recommend there be some, no staging, no need to alter beyond, that a limited disturbance, be established and preserve that area.
And that the boundary, would there be some kind of obvious boundary line that would help people to recognize where that was?
Yeah, I mean, that may be another thing when they come in and talk to us about the modification too, but, they're doing work. The only thing they've really preserved in terms of the Aura area, because the zoning board waived the bylaw in the original review. And since they're not opening it back up, then there's not really an opportunity, I don't think, to ask them to not waive it. But anyway, they are preserving 25 feet, so they are keeping the 25-foot offset, essentially. And so we're probably, when we look at it from, when they come back to amend their order, probably going to have to come up with some more permanent delineation or way to demarcate that 25-foot area.
Sorry to sound ignorant, but waived the bylaw, you mean because it's a 40B?
Well, I thought
Yes.
because of 40B, they were all waived.
No, they're not.
Okay.
Not automatically. It's not an automatic waiver.
Yeah.
Their burden is the same to show that they can't build or they can't make their profit or whatever, without getting the waiver. I don't believe that they ever did prove it. I don't think they tried.
But it got waived
But it got
anyway.
waived anyway. And then the Wetlands Protection Act is not waived. In any case, they have to comply with the Wetlands Protection Act.
Right, it's just
Yeah.
our bylaw.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
So anybody have any other thoughts?
The 4 cuts could be for the staging, for the building purposes, maybe.
Maybe just,
I
mean,
think
like
they
4
want to go by
driveways,
pod
yeah.
because it's,
we just convenience
Fine.
of the.
and, I think this is how you get into your neighborhood, that's your
Right.
neighborhood. Because it's all set, so it's one of those you park behind the houses
Yeah.
and everything faces the central. So my guess is it's, your own mini driveway.
Are we ready to move on?
Just make a couple notes since I wasn't sitting here.
There's a big article on that. Was it the Bolton Independent? There was a big article on this development
On which one?
on the
Craftsman
Craftsman Village.
You mean the recent cut?
Within the past few weeks.
Yeah, you read it, but for some reason I missed that one, yeah.
Somewhere, I know it's not somewhere.
Okay, I think I got it off. I can listen.
I was watching The Economist.
Okay, so DePietro, Carol, you had said this morning, or yesterday morning, that the DEP might issue a warrant to enter the premises.
Well, so I didn't have this one asterisk, but the quick update is that DEP hasn't had any word back from Mr. DePietro. DEP's in the process of moving their offices, and so the person who was assigned to this enforcement case spoke with the Stowe Conservation Administrator and indicated that this week they'd be settled back into his office, and I'm not sure whether it was the only next step, but a next step might be to try to get a warrant to go onto the property. So I didn't see that person today at the DEP meeting I went to, so I don't have any further update, but we're still waiting to see. We're, again, following DEP's lead at this point.
So they haven't responded at all?
No.
Oh,
What does it mean to get a warrant? They have to go before a judge, or,
I believe so.
and then they need a police escort?
I don't know that part.
A warrant isn't like a summons.
No, that's too, yeah, we're allowed to go on.
Oh,
Yeah, it's just allowing you to go on to investigate or.
So
I also don't have anything new from Bree, so
Okay.
I would just give her
Okay,
that.
then we're gonna go into land management, the geocaching request. Any questions?
So, I don't have anything new since yesterday. The guy, what did I send you guys on that? Did I send you his packet?
I don't, well, I
No.
didn't see it if you did, but
Okay.
you showed me
Yeah.
in your office that he just sent information about what geocaching is. But I think we already know
I
that.
think the question.
Yeah,
is, what
and
do
he
you
had a
cache?
little,
Yeah.
he had a little note with it. So he said, I'm looking to hide some geocaches in Bolton. Some of the areas of interest include Philbin Land, Conservation, Bower Springs, Vaughn Hill, and has some caches there, so not that area. Others would be Moen, Welsh Pond, Marble Hill. Marble Hill. That's not Marble Hill,
You
Stowe.
said not
Yeah,
Bower Springs and not
something
Pond Hills?
No, it doesn't, it says, some areas of interest include Philbin Land, Conservation, Bower Springs, Vaughn, and then it says comma, but it says Vaughn Hills has some caches there, so not that area. Others would be Moen property, Welsh Pond, and Marble Hill. I don't know what Marble Hill. I only know that in Stowe.
Welsh Pond.
People can
It's
seek it
listed.
out.
Well, we
you know,
definitely
it's
want-
just
well,
legal
we
ID
definitely
and
need to know.
look,
I think
it's
we're
Yeah.
afford it,
So these
don't try to figure
caches
out where it is.
would have little or no impact on the existing trail
Oh, I found
systems.
it, here it is.
Okay, so it's.
Some kid-friendly ones could be next to the trail, others would be a little off the trail. We tend to use clear paths already there, like natural deer runs and such. The rules and guidelines for geocaching assures that we do things right in regards to safety for others and preserving the land we use. So, and then you just sent sort of the general
Well,
things about geocaching. You know, you can have different sizes.
right,
With
Yeah,
a form
the size
fill
would
out.
be the interesting question. I know people that will do geocaching. All the sites they're all very much leave no trace. Not that that means it makes it that easy, but most people who are doing it
I
are
was-
respectful.
Right, although I was telling Carol that we used to do geocaching, and there's one in particular that's on top of Brown Hill at Wachusett Meadow Wildlife Sanctuary. And you can see like the spokes of a wheel, trails
Yeah, that's
going
true.
right to the geocache that's trampling out all the blueberry bushes up there. So it can have impact. I mean,
So I think, again, you could just say, you will consider it so long as it's not in a spot that it would cause radiating trails
Right.
to get to it.
Okay.
And that it's small, no bigger than, a certain size.
Yeah.
And that it's removed after
Yeah.
a certain period.
I'm also thinking, what about excluding Welsh Pond Bog?
Yeah, and you can say you don't want it
Because
there.
that is a
Yeah.
more sensitive, and a rare habitat here.
So can somebody recap exactly what geocaching,
Oh,
what
so
is the impact that it
No,
has?
no, go ahead.
Because I,
so they, do you know what letterboxing is? Are you familiar with that? No.
I
You said
Okay.
your letterbox
So
for
they
kids is
hide,
how we
somebody
figured it.
hides like a
bench
box,
box.
a box
Yeah.
with things in it, and I'll tell you what the things are. Someplace where hikers go find it, and for geocaching, you get a waypoint, and, at least when we were doing it, the waypoints would only get you to like plus or minus 30 feet.
You're gonna
But
pass this
it's
down
still-
too, right?
So even when you got to the area, you'd have to like hunt around for it.
Okay.
And you get there, you find the box, and the traditional thing in geocaching is you take out a prize that's in there and you put one in. And they can be little kid oriented, they can be adult oriented, any kind of things like that. Families do it, my kids used to like to do it when they were younger.
oh, I see. So it's the act of digging up the
Yeah.
box and putting it back that's
Well,
causing.
So you have to
and
find
looking
it.
for it. So like if you don't, even if you have a waypoint, like my son just started doing it last year, and so he's not a little kid anymore, but he liked the using, a map and compass or,
Right, I
some
see.
way of trying
I
to get
see.
to it.
Okay.
And so sometimes you can get close and then you end up tromping around
Right.
a little bit.
I
Right,
see.
and they can be off the trail, they can be way off the trail, or you don't know where it is, and you're just kind of, using your compass or your GPS to find it.
You could be following kids that are in some other geocache, but you're following them because they look like they know where they're going.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens
But
in
it's fun,
rallies all the
I
time.
think they're good things to have, it gets people out as fun,
Well, and I think the other point that this gentleman also included, and I'm not sure really on the map, but he's basically saying there are already, people haven't
Yeah,
asked and they're
people
putting them
ask,
out
yeah.
there. So here he is, he's asking, he's just looking for some guidance. And so I think rather than say we want to, he's feeling like there's a catch-22. He doesn't want to say where he wants to put it, he wants to know where he can put it, and then he'll go and look for a place to put it. So he hasn't exactly figured out where he would, he just wants to know what the parameters really are,
So if there's some out there already, then you can go online and figure out, so is there a map of where they are?
It's in the packet what he sent.
The ones that he didn't do?
Is that
Right, just what's on the geocaching
There
site.
are lots of
That's
them.
the green dot that he wants?
No, he's not saying a specific spot. Go to the next map.
Is there a difference
I
between
don't know
conservation
what that
land
is.
and?
I'm not sure what that one was either, but that was an example. This is, the whole thing he's giving you as an example. It's like, if you go to the geocaching site, you fill in a form.
It's all a conservation land, I think,
Yes.
because
Yeah, give it a new zip code.
depends on the organization that protected it.
Wow.
Like, I don't know, like National Park land,
No, I mean.
I never knew.
And now you know, you may have a new pastime.
Go.
That would be very interesting.
It is, it's fun.
Yeah, it sounds
I mean,
fun.
I don't do it a ton, but it is a fun, it's certainly a fun way to get people out.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's
They
not,
give out directions like
I mean, as you
take
said,
this
that
Oh,
one
yeah,
particular
yeah.
place
When
did
you
cause
get to
some
the
Yeah.
falls,
impact.
You take the
Yeah.
trails to the right.
But I think if
Yeah.
we, you know, said,
Go behind,
you know,
So what are the parameters?
But they would-
Right.
We don't want radiating trails. We don't want it in Welsh
Yeah,
Pond,
it's a
because it's
stamp
sensitive
on
bog.
the
Right.
kid.
he's
Yeah.
There's some
Okay.
stamp
We don't want it in,
My son- my son's
done it on
any
the
wet
Cape.
areas, did
So
you
in
care?
other
Nice
places,
trails
it's
down
just-
in wetlands?
right, I would think no for wetlands. I would think no.
The reason they do it is for
I
illustration.
think no.
Yeah.
I mean, and do people really want to go into the wetland areas to do
I never
this?
heard
I mean,
of
I would think.
Right, I mean, I don't think you want to get into the soggy
Right.
wetlands.
I mean, I think we would keep them out of those areas if we could.
Yeah. How about not during breeding, you know, I don't know, if you say breeding season, it's for too many different things.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
You mean make it seasonal? I don't
Or
know
like
if there's
in
any,
nature.
because they put these on like there's a website where you go, and I don't know
Yeah.
if there's a seasonality. Like
Well, I guess so, I mean, you know, one bird that they're concerned about, you know, or they use their studying, you know, is the ovenbird who nests on the
Right.
ground, you know. So, I mean, one of the things is that you don't want people tromping around, but you almost never see them, you know, but it's not like it's a lot of people necessarily.
It's going to have impact no matter what. People's dogs go running through it too.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, not off the trail, well, I guess they do,
They
yeah,
do.
yeah.
I don't know. I think
So we've just said, so we don't want it to cause radial trails. We
Yeah.
don't want it to be in Welsh Pond, and we don't want it to be in the wetlands. Is there any?
Yes, size would be the only other thing.
And
with
keep
that, Under a foot
So he
square.
had like,
Yeah, I mean, the
big
large example is a huge payout.
yeah, the big bucket.
I mean, I
Yeah.
can't imagine what it would take to bury.
Regular-
In
Yeah.
Bolton, I mean, with all the rocks.
so. The ones I've seen are like these the two middle sizes. I mean, this is, I've never seen a micro one. I guess you don't put anything in there.
So not above the regular size.
Not above the regular size. Yeah. I guess not see that.
Oh, those good.
Never seen a bucket.
Official sizes.
Something
I've never
like
come
that.
across a bucket, yeah. Unless they.
All right, we'll get this off the agenda.
Sorry. Efficiency issue. Okay,
64
5
years, I've never heard of it.
Five Share is still at the same point that we're at. The engineer has contacted the contractor to find out when he's going to pave. He hadn't had any response as of yesterday, I didn't see anything. So we're getting now a little bit tighter with that. I'm getting a little more concerned with him on that. But if the weather warms up, they still potentially have some time to do that. And the only other thing on that was that Mike Callahan, who we have hired to do our beaver control maintenance, he went out and took a look at the new dam, and he suggested that we just watch it this year. He doesn't think that there's any reason to put in any device, and
This is the guy who did the bars past too?
yeah, he had been doing Five Shire before we took that pipe out. So that's just something we'll have to keep our eye on and decide whether it needs any kind of control.
Is the equipment out of Five Shire now?
The contractor's equipment is out, all the plantings are done. It's really just the paving on the access road and the
I see.
driveway that's needed.
And that big pile of stone?
That's still there. We own that, essentially.
Right.
So I did contact one person I'm trying to get a person out to look at maybe using that stone both for benches and for that upper pond.
Yeah.
And he responded that he would let me know when he was in the area. He's not from this area, I think he's from Barry. So if I don't hear from him, maybe this week, I'll see if we can't maybe try to set something up. Just because we need to figure it out for budget, stuff. Yeah, so I have bills for you to sign. So one form is assigned for Century Mill, so you may not want to sign that one. That's this one, because it's from Jim. That's the 60,000 that I knew about. I have that one prepared. This is for money we owe by Leonard Engineering for their work on getting the as-built done. Oh, that's another thing, if I should, but related. I did ask them, and I haven't heard from them that they've done it yet, but I'm still waiting for them to submit to the state to get our jurisdiction changed. And they had to get the as-built plans prepared to do that, which they did, and then we found, that's when we found that the bridge and the walkway didn't completely stay on our property, and they had to go back and modify that. That's all been done. But anyway, I don't know if they've submitted that yet or not. I also have a bill here for, I used the town credit card for work that Ronan was doing at Von Hill for water bars that were being put in. So we have to buy some materials for that. We also have on here, this wouldn't be out of our budget, but of course Lee and Whitman for payment for work for on Condyne that they did. And then, so one of the big items that we haven't talked about too much, but we may talk about still tonight, is Henderson Stryker. There are our land management consultants that we use at Bower Springs. And so attached in here is work that they've been doing through spring, summer, and fall, and that's $4,407.
So we're only signing that.
Yep.
Oh,
See.
each one.
No, you can just sign up top, that's fine, it's just this page.
Was there other correspondence?
Not, the only other correspondence, I guess, that that's not sort of on the agenda already is just that I did go to the I went to the DEP regulatory meeting today. So I did pick up some information about the changes that they've made, and some of it will not be, some of the changes are, some of the stuff is coastal, so they kind of breeze through anything like that was related to that. They spent quite a bit of time, there's a whole new section on ecological restoration. So we had talked about this, if the commission had gone forward with the Five Shire Dam and wanted to remove the dam, and for the purposes of ecological restoration, for purposes of really improving the habitat and so forth, that is one example of what would fall into this new category. And they have two things that they've established. One is a limited project for ecological restoration, which like invasive plant management might fall into. Or if you meet other eligibility criteria, you can go to what they're calling like a general permit. And you have to go first and get all kinds of other approvals before you can go to the Conservation Commission. But it's a new notice of intent form just for ecological restoration projects. And it allows the applicant to present it to the commission, but there's a standard order of conditions that you can't add any conditions to it, you can't detract any conditions from it. It's strictly a general permit. But the steps and hoops that they have to go to before they come to the commission include approvals from Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program if they're in an estimated priority habitat, and communications and approvals from, I think, Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, Fisheries and Wildlife. I think it was a sister agency. I think it was Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, but it's not necessarily the Heritage Program that's also within that. So some of the other kinds of examples were just stream daylighting, dam removal, freshwater stream crossings, stream daylighting, culvert replacing to eliminate tidal restrictions, again, that wouldn't affect us, shellfish habitat, which wouldn't affect us, fish species, that's what I was going to say, fish passage and rare species habitat improvements.
Stream crossings.
But only if it's a ecological restoration project.
Okay.
So if you were taking out an old culvert to improve the stream or something. But there was a lot of discussion amongst, in particular, consultants who were there. You know, if you had a road improvement project and you were going to not do any improvement to the culvert because you didn't want to have to go through the whole notice of intent process on the culvert, you know, could you use this process because you would do it because you wanted to make the improvement, but you didn't want to go through the whole new notice of intent process. And I don't think that that was the intention, you know, it's not the intention, you know, that your project is a road improvement project. And so, you know, therefore, but the idea behind it is to make these ecological improvements. So, you know, it might depend. It may still, it was a streamlined formatting. Then there were also some modifications made to the, you know how they already have some minor activities that are allowed in buffer zones. They've added some things like that, mostly to do with utilities and roadway work. Anyway, so there'll be stuff that might come up, but it's all, some of the forms are online and are effective and available. The regulations have been promulgated, so they're online and are effective, but they are still working out some things. Like one of the things that had a lot of discussion too was a butter notification. So again, that's just a procedural thing, you'd think, right? But if you can be, it's an appealable item, it's an issue. You know, if you didn't get properly noticed, or if you know, there's an issue that's affecting your property and you didn't, you know, you weren't notified. So some of the projects that are difficult are like long linear projects. You know, how many people do you notify? So if you are doing work on a rail line, or if you're doing work on the road, you know, and so, you know, and so in the past it was kind of like you had to give a reasonable distance sort of beyond. Anyway, they've tried to come up with some ways to clarify that, and it still wasn't completely clear. So I think it's improved with what they tried to do, but there were still some examples that people were throwing out, and it wasn't.
So is this going to come up a lot because of invasive species? People clearing out bittersweet?
I don't know how many people are going to do that as a project, you know, but it could be to our benefit for ourselves if we were doing it, or the land trust, you know, was doing the project, or, you know, or say another state agency, you know, which they don't necessarily always fall under, depending on, anyway. I was thinking more like at the Delaney project or something, if somebody came in with something. So I don't know how much it'll affect us. I guess we'll have to see. But I didn't get the impression that we're going to see a lot of this stuff. But
About taxation bylaw.
yeah, so we, you know, by, what was the date? December. By December 8th, so that's one meeting from now that we have left, we have to have our budget in and all articles. So we were talking about whether or not we were going to revise the taxation bylaw to make it more to our liking, so that we would feel, you know, that we could use it and there would be no questions. So I don't know how you want to go about that. If, you know, I think when we talked about it last week, Maria, you weren't here, and so Brian was like, there was some certain wording and language that had been suggested.
So it was pretty simple.
It was really,
It was just adding the concept of extension. The actual word extension needs to be included in the
Do we
bylaw.
have the bylaw?
It was like renewals and extension. Yeah, that's a.
There was a question whether or
I
not
could see it
renewal was the same as an extension.
Yeah.
And apparently, to me, there's no difference, but
To me, there isn't
apparently
either.
to the town there is. So we need to fix that. And my only question is, does the word permit need to be in there? I'm not sure.
Permit extension as opposed to just extension?
Right, I don't want them coming back and saying, well, this is a permit.
Well, we should even just add, or we should do all,
As,
permits, renewals, extensions.
Right.
Just
Okay.
any wording we can.
So I
think of.
guess-
Don seemed very open, he thought that was, he
Okay,
actually
so,
suggested that we do this.
Is that something then you want me to try to do, or do you want to do it?
Do you have it written?
Either way, yeah, if I
Yeah,
can see
I think
that
I've given it to you.
paragraph.
I think I've
Yeah.
given it to all
I
of you.
know, I
I have
know.
it,
But I don't know that we could find the part, I think.
I think it's right in the first sentence.
Yeah, Maria could just put her finger on exactly what.
But if you're gonna put your finger on it, if you could just change the language, like just redline it or something, that would
Okay,
be
fine.
great. You know,
I'll do that.
that way I just have where you think it needs to be, and then,
Okay,
and then we can submit that when we,
okay.
if that would be helpful. And I don't know that there's any other, we're not talking about making any other any other articles, right? We don't-
No, I think that was the whole reason it
Okay.
came up, was
Well-
that, yeah, but. Yes.
Whenever you're ready,
Alright,
you want to
so-
approve those minutes? Oh, sorry.
These order of conditions, are those dictated by the state?
Which ones?
Order conditions that we issue? Those
Um.
fall on, those also fall under our bylaws as well, right?
Well, so we
There's-
issue an
there's-
order conditions under the Wetlands Protection Act, and we issue an order conditions under our
Okay.
bylaw.
Okay, so when we have a set of conditions, when it comes time to giving money back, we don't currently have any language that says if a person is delinquent in their taxes, we're not necessarily required to give that money back. And I think that is sadly lacking.
That's a really good addition.
So our bylaw allows us to, well, let's see, so so the question, I think what you're asking, is this a bylaw change or is this a
Right.
regulation change?
Right. I'm
So,
not sure.
let's see, so our bylaw,
Would it make more sense for the agency that's trying to collect the taxes to attach funds that are likely to be released rather than the other way around?
well, so I would say if you're going to think of it that way, then you'd be looking at the taxation, the delinquent tax section of the bylaw, and making a change in that section. That would maybe say something, again, I'm not looking at that section, but something to the effect of what Maria said, that tax delinquent landowners, if money is being released to them by some other, say, some other board or committee, that money will
We will issue a levy.
will be put into the
Right.
town coffers to help pay the, I mean, but so if you, when you look at the bylaw, see if you can figure out a place that would go.
Well, so that's the kind of change that I think needs to be run by an attorney.
Right, but we need to draft something first. They won't draft it for you. So we have
if I
to draft
give you
it and
something
then,
and then what do you do with it? Who's going
Well-
to review it besides us?
all of the town meeting articles go to town council.
Okay. Okay.
And
It'd
they're
be
also going to
nice-
be looked at by Dawn and by the advisory committee and other people, selectmen.
Okay, so at that, okay, so if they go through these, so there's a lot of review that happens before it goes to town council? Is there
Yeah.
a chance that somebody else could look at it and say, oh, I don't think we need this, I think, or I'm just gonna throw it aside, and it's not.
Well, you as the Conservation Commission have the right to submit an article. Right?
Okay.
You don't need a citizen's petition to submit the article.
Okay,
So
and nobody could stop us from.
I don't
submitting
think
it.
that that's the case.
The
I mean, and
the advisory committee may write an opinion on it.
yeah, they may, they may advise
Agree.
yay or nay, and the selectmen may do the same thing. And so I guess what I would say is if you can at least find where you think and what language we might, even just vague,
So
but
it's-
something
It'll be in
that-
that same taxation.
I'm thinking
section
that
we're
would probably be the right
Okay.
place for that. And then, we can talk to the tax collector and the town treasurer and just say, is this even feasible? This is what we want to propose. is it even feasible? And if it is there, do you have any other suggested language that you would have, that we would tie it to?
Okay.
And if not, if it's not feasible, then I can come back and say, just based on what they said, they don't think it's something that they could work with, for whatever reason. I mean, maybe that's never going to be the case, but just, they may have some reason that's not how it works, technically, how money coming in can't be transferred that way or something. But I don't know if in our own bylaw, there's any place that it would that we would need to have it or want to have anything like that.
I don't think ours is the right place. I think the collecting of the taxes should be done by the tax collecting agency, not us.
Because
Right, no,
our
no, it
bylaw just
wasn't-
talks
it wasn't-
about-
It wasn't collecting the
No.
taxes, it was,
Not giving money back to them.
Right.
Releasing the
Well,
escrow.
that's what I mean. They would be essentially seizing the amount of the refund in lieu of back taxes, which I think they have an appropriate right to do.
Well, she can ask it. I mean, I
Sure.
know town council might disagree, but you can.
Well, I think it needs to be somewhere. If it's not under us, it needs to be somewhere for the town. I can't understand why the town doesn't have it already. And we have examples right now where I think it's hurting the town. And there's no need for it. There's no excuse.
Okay, so I will look in our bylaw. I think our bylaws, so we have under application for permit and request for determination fees and expenses and security. And under security, it says the commission may require the applicant's performance and observance of an order of conditions, including mitigation, be secured wholly or in part by one or more methods set forth in the regulations. This security shall be in addition to any security by any other board. So we really only talk about security. We don't, in our bylaw, talk about the release of that security,
No.
And then in our regulations, we talk about the form of surety and security.
What I'm also thinking of is if every agency in the town wanted to behave similarly, they'd have to pass their own bylaw.
Right, so
Whereas
having it in one spot.
Right, having it in the taxing department means it covers everybody.
Yeah. So, but I would just say, so in our regulations, it says the commission at its discretion may allow partial or complete release of guaranteed funds as sections of a project are completed. The commission has the right not to release part of the guaranteed funds until after the project is finished and a certificate of compliance is issued. Security shall be released to the commission so that the town can complete the required improvements or meet conditions upon certification by the commission that that's just getting the money from the town if we need to pull it. So I don't really think it would go in our regulations either. But that's something that somebody could, one way or another, tell us. Okay.
the budget.
Do you have minutes for us to approve?
Yes, I gave you minutes.
Yeah.
I don't think I made a copy of them, so. I don't know if anyone had any revisions or anything.
I did not, the ones that were in the email the other day.
Yeah, I just sent it out
Yeah, I
Friday.
can't, I'm trying to think of the date, but I didn't have any.
Well, it was from the 4th, November 4th.
I didn't have any, I read them quickly.
Okay.
No, I read them, I didn't have any.
Okay, so you'll approve them? You want to make a motion to approve them?
Oh, I make a motion to approve the minutes from November 4th.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We'll move to land protection.
What about the budget?
Oh, what did I miss?
The budget.
What was that?
Oh, it's not on your old one, sorry, I added it, because I realized I'd sent you out the whole
Sorry.
package, and we only have one other meeting before
Okay.
everything's
All right.
due.
The budget.
So, the budget.
I have another copy.
Prepare for meeting of advisory committee, which,
So we started to talk about that at the beginning of the night. So that is on a Tuesday, so we I guess the desire would be to make it earlier if possible, only because we already have that meeting that night scheduled for.
oh,
an off meeting.
Oh, I see. So what time is their meeting?
Jim read it. Do you have it again?
8:15.
What's that?
8:15.
Oh, that stinks. So we have ours that day.
Oh, it's the 13th again?
Yeah.
Ah.
So we're going to see if we can get it made earlier, before we would know. Well, let's go back, before we even do that. So I sent out a variety of dates, and some of them were off meeting dates. And based on everyone's response to the poll, 7:30 and 8 o'clock would be okay starting times. I'm not looking at my note, I guess, but that's what I'm remembering it saying. So Heinz had made a preference to start them at 8 because that just worked with his family schedule. So if that's fine with everyone, then we would just start them at 8. Janet said, she'd like to have an end time.
Yes, I know.
Like if it's an hour or
An
is
hour
it,
and a half.
an hour and a half,
And then we just stop when we're.
Yep, mid-sentence even.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would guess I'd want to ask is we talked a little bit about where we want to meet. I didn't set up rooms, and so I need to find a spot unless we want to go to like a restaurant or something. So it was advised to me that, you could have it at somebody's house, but they don't recommend it because you have to have it open to the public and you have to have it handicap accessible. So, the other option was if we don't want to do it in a room like this, if we want to have a little off-site, we can go to a restaurant or something, and-
Just one
At
more
8 o'clock?
comment.
At 8 o'clock at night?
Yeah, I don't really want to. I would look for dinner anyway.
Comment on trying to have meetings in restaurants. From trying to have Rotary board meetings in Slaters, it's awfully noisy. Even in Papagino's, it can be
Well, if we want to
difficult to
make it
get
fun,
work
we can
done.
bring something. I'll bring brownies or something, we can make it, just have it here and bring.
Okay, well, I have to see if the rooms are available on those off nights then. I'll look for space then, but you don't want to do it in a restaurant then?
Emma's Cafe has a room where it's nice and quiet and cozy.
Not at night.
Depends on the night.
Oh, really? I didn't think they were open at night.
Depends on how you negotiate with them.
Wait, what are our options?
You want to buy food?
Slaters?
Slaters is loud.
Yeah,
International.
They're closed.
International.
Whoa.
International
Yeah,
probably has a room.
Where else?
It's a fireside, but the restaurant's open to the public now.
I was
It's
thinking
really
like the
good.
library or.
It is good.
It's really good, nobody goes there.
Well, it's
That's
possible that you can use the
fantastic.
library, but the library you can't use for regular meetings, and a lot of times Tuesday nights are not available, but,
It would be nice to have it, maybe would you want it at the restaurant? I don't know, just kind of.
Break it up.
Yeah.
all right, well, let me look around for some space. I'll throw that stuff out again. But I guess, so I just wanted to double check on the time. So based on the time, if we agree that we want to meet at 8, because that is more convenient for everyone to be able to attend, then this budget meeting would not really work for us so we'd prefer to have it earlier.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless, is it more important so it's Heinz that's keeping us at 8. Is it more important for him to attend the advisory meeting or to attend because he's gonna.
Well, so the way the advisory committee meetings have usually gone is that not the whole commission tends to attend it.
Okay.
And last year Brian attended it with me. I think the year before Bob Cohen maybe attended. So it's usually a couple of people, one or two people, whoever has the night available or time available and who's interested.
Okay.
It could be the whole commission, and and again, if the whole commission comes, then it's a good learning experience, and you kind of meet the other people on the advisory committee, and you get to find out what they're concerned about.
Yeah.
So it's a committee meeting, but we have done it in the past where it's usually been myself and somebody else,
Makes sense.
and and sometimes they go very fine-tooth through every line item and want to have a very serious conversation and strong understanding about everything you're doing, and other times they kind of get it, So I don't know how this will be. It's a lot of, there's some new people on it, and there's some people who have been on it for a while, so.
Dave Lindsay was probably one of the ones going through
The fine tooth.
Yeah, and I don't remember him being necessarily really picky to the Conservation Commission so much, but he,
No.
he in general, was one of the members who would be working. both Randy and Bob Sikansky have, both, were able to work with us, but they had, questions. And so one of the things I said, about one of the big items that we have had the last few years is that we asked for additional money for the management of, in particular, Bower Springs, because we hadn't been doing management there and nothing was happening on it, and it was perceived, at least by the commission and others at that time, that it needed to have some serious, work done on the invasives and on opening the fields up, and mostly that field management. So we did a combination of things, but, that we had an open, what did we call it? We had a management plan done by Conway School of Design, and they, gave certain recommendations, and we talked to a couple of different people who would be potentially able to do some of those things, and we ended up bringing in Henderson Stryker, a team, to do that work. In part because they had the experience, in part because they had the equipment. And did any of you go attend that meeting with them? Anderson Stryker and Jim Henderson came in and presented, his management, what he's done. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to that.
Yeah. So, anyway, so he's been so he was the one that we had hired to do that stuff, and so it's been a few years now, and so I sent him the question of, what do you see as having been doing this now for a while, how are we doing? Like, is it coming to a close? Like, we don't need to do as much, or is it never ending? And so I guess his comments were, let me just see. So, he said, I think that there are a lot of improvements to note. There's fewer invasive vines getting into important tree canopies, more accessible field and field edges, which makes it easier to mow, inspect, and maintain for tree branches and invasives, fewer major buckthorn and autumn olive, bittersweet breakouts from field edges and into edge trees and canopies, reduction in field obstructions, fallen logs, bittersweet clumps and trees. Numerous dead, drowned trees were cleaned up. Some were danger to the public. Some back areas made accessible to allow access that are victim to poison ivy, bittersweet, and vine attack. Huge amounts of invasive trellises removed from the understory along the main path. Access improved to allow better maintenance and mowing. Strangled upper pond meadow area cleared of invasive autumn olive and is now maintainable and mowable. Back trail was made more accessible along the stream towards the ponds. He says, people also see that it demonstrated valuable conservation, it demonstrated to people that valuable conservation lands need regular maintenance to protect the values and also for critical habitat. He said he's regularly stopped and asked questions by people who are excited to see someone who's doing something to save Bower Springs. Well, now I know Janet has different observations on some of that.
Yeah.
Well, but anyway, and he's just telling us what he, I asked him, what do you think?
Everybody wants to think their work is meaningful.
Yep. So, and then let me see. And so in his other report, he said, again, overall significant progress is being made. He said that some of the other field tasks that they have remaining, it's pretty much the same stuff, but it's in different edges of the fields and so forth, I guess. So I think, one of the questions is whether or not the amount that we've been asking for is still needed and necessary, and I'm not sure that I quite have the handle on that, to be honest, yet. And so I did walk it with Janet last week, just to sort of take a look at you know, this is how it is looking,
The
you know.
devastation outside.
So why don't you tell them why you think it's that way? I don't know if everyone knows,
So we
but-
don't get to
Okay.
prolong this any longer.
Okay. But anyway, so we need to figure out whether we're going to continue at that same level or whether we can reduce it. And I would say that from the last year's discussion that I had with him is that, you know, the desire was to ultimately make it something that didn't have to be done as frequently and/or by necessarily an outside consultant kind of person, and that somebody more local could take over it. Now, the problem that I've had a little bit with that is that it fluctuates, and that's part of the reason that it got left for so long, is because you get a volunteer, like last year I had a volunteer who was willing to use the brush hog, and so, you know, you could maybe have that person go out and do some extra mowing, but then if that person didn't come back, you know, they retired, wanted to do more with his family, so now, you know, now I don't have anyone who's doing that, so then you don't have that volunteer, so you're gonna just let it go, or do you pay for it? You know, and so, we're not really at the stage necessarily of saying that we can't, you know, we don't have any volunteers who can do it, you know, it has to be paid for, it's just how much you can pay for it. And if you look around and you walk around, you know, it is never ending to some degree, the amount of invasives that are there. But we've done a lot in terms of, as he says, field edges and tree canopies, you know, and the tree islands, which was kind of the main thing.
It's not really something that the trail committee could participate?
No, not that, we don't have the equipment. We don't have a mower to mow that. I mean, it's a tractor. Now, last year, I'm still waiting, hopefully it's happening, but I have to make another call. Last year I contracted with Mark Case to do the mowing at Butternut, and he told me, I called him this year and he said he wanted to do it, but I haven't heard from him whether he did it yet or not. You know, we're starting to get late into the
Do
season.
we have a Parks Commission?
We have a Park and Rec committee.
Do they have any equipment?
No, and they have no staff.
That kind of limits.
That limits
Yeah,
it.
so, yeah, how they can help us.
So the
out.
only one who has equipment is DPW, and DPW is stretched.
Right.
You know, they have all they can do to keep
We'll
them.
have to keep money in the budget. I guess it's just a question of is it reducing it at all?
The trust
Well, and
can't do anything, can't take over anything like that?
Well, first of all, it's town land.
Oh.
Second of all, it's, they have all they can do at this point with what they're
Right.
working on with Smith. They, you know, so I would say no without talking to them.
Is it close enough to Harvard so that they tell
Yes.
us anything?
No, Harvard did, for many years, they mowed it for us, not knowingly to us, you know. So that was one of the other problems, is that there was a guy who's now passed away, but so he worked for the DPW in Harvard, and he liked Bower Springs, and he liked going out in his mower, and so he would mow it. But it was haphazard. If he had the time, he would do it. So I would hire someone, and I'd send them out, and they'd get out there, and it was already mowed. So then that didn't work very well, you know, because now I'm committing somebody to a job, and it's done. You know, so finally sort of tried to figure out, well, you know, again, are we going to have somebody do it haphazardly, or are we going to do it, you know? And so we decided we were going to do it, and especially when the person became no longer available on there. And Harvard doesn't own all of the fields, you know, we own the fields. So, anyway, I mean, the money's there right now, it's just, it's an
Right.
issue for us to think about, so I'm just trying to raise it so you'll be aware of it. I think if we, and we kind of put that under, so I was just, I said, we kind of put that under land capital because it was kind of a new project and it wasn't just maintenance, so we also have money in our land maintenance account. And, you know, if, for example, you know, if that money was available, you know, we might do other capital projects on other properties, you know, so an example would be Fifeshire, you know, if we felt like we wanted to get that stone work done on the edge of the pond, you know, that could be considered a capital type of project. Whether or not they want to keep it in the budget as capital, or every time we have a capital project, either do it as an article or do it, you know, is kind of a question, but. So.
Is Huntington Stryker supposed to get back to you to give you a sense of what would, you know, how much it would cost to continue to maintain it the way it is now?
I don't know that I asked him specifically to do that, so I can get back to him and ask him.
Is that what you wanted to know, though? I mean, that's what we need to...
Well, I kind of wanted to know how, no, what I asked him is what I wanted to know, is how did he feel what has been, you know, they've been doing, what was the significant progress? Did they feel like there's been significant progress? You know, and I may have actually said, and you know, what do we need to continue, but I'd have to double check, because he didn't really answer that.
So it might be good to know how much money we'd be spending on this.
Yeah, I did ask him that last year. So I don't know if there's other line items, if ever people looked at the budget, you know, if you have questions on it, or... I know that dues and membership, I did get something from Mass Audubon, that'll be, not Mass Audubon, I did get something from Mass Association of Conservation Commission members. They try to send us what the increase will be every year around this time, because they know we're doing our budget, so that'll have to go up. You know, one of the items that we have talked about in the past few years with the advisory committee is the conservation fund. They don't put any money in the conservation fund. And so, but there is still some money. I have to double check what that is. Was it like 20,000, 20 or 30,000 maybe left?
30,200 now or something. Right?
Yeah, so, you know, they kind of felt like, you know, you still have a little bit to play with, that they weren't going to put any money into it, but if we don't have a project.
Proposed we spend it down.
Yeah, I mean, if we could have a project and spend it down, then we'd have some more things, so that's something else. Last year, I think we increased the training line item because we did think that we needed to have a little bit more to cover newer members who had been coming in. So I would probably think that we'd want to keep that at least at the same, if not, maybe see if there was money to make it higher. Everything else is fairly just consistent with what we've gotten over the last few years, but anyway, nobody has questions on it.
Nothing jumped out at me looking through it.
Okay. So Karen couldn't come tonight, but she attended the summit and sent everybody, you know, her review of that. So my biggest takeaway from that, I don't know if other people have an opinion, but was that to me it seems like we need to really start to focus on, just looking for her comments, on we're going to need to tell FERC what we want them to do, you know, with this process. You know, what we want them to look at, what we want them to consider, and what our concerns are. So I was thinking that's, and I know she has it in here somewhere, but that's what I was thinking is something that would probably be our next best step. I don't know, anybody else have another takeaway from it?
No, and then it seemed like those were the two. For those next two opportunities to really put in with FERC, one was make the case of what you want them to do.
Yeah.
And that was like the next one upcoming.
Say something about, think about other things too, like the Clean Water Act.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were other agencies that should be,
Yeah.
wish I had it.
Not just FERC. Yeah.
I mean, my overall sense from that message was that there are ways to go about this beyond what we've talked about. And it seemed like it was a great meeting, I mean, for notes. And it was more comprehensive than what we got from MAC, which I also thought was very helpful. As a sort of, I think their message was, here's what all conservation commissions could do. But Karen's message was like, you can do that plus this other set of things.
Yeah.
Well, so I thought that one thing that we should look at is the overall map of where it's going through town right now as it's proposed, where the wetlands are, where conservation restrictions area, not just what we've been looking at over the Rocky Dundee, but the whole length of it, because we haven't really spent much time on the whole thing, just so we have a better sense of our concerns on the entire thing, you know, not just the piece that might go through conservation land.
Do you have a big map?
Well, so I have what was filed with FERC, and then I made, I did look, I have what I made for the walk, so that doesn't include the entire thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I made one for the whole thing, but I know I looked at the wetlands on the other thing. I mean, there's certainly, is it Great Brook, I think, or whatever's coming, it's tributary to Great Brook. I think it's Great Brook. The headwaters of Great Brook comes through off of Harvard Road. And there's wetlands associated with that, so there'll be impacts there. And then I think there's, BCT has land up on Harvard Road that'll be impacted, as well as there may be some other conservation restricted land. So, I don't know, I can put together a map if you think that's what, that would be helpful for the next meeting.
Schecter Farm has that they have the agricultural restriction. It's affected.
It goes through them.
Yeah, I think we had one APR affected. I think it's that. Yeah.
Did a lot of folks come to the walk?
Yeah, it was a great walk.
This Friday.
Yep, so Jim, Liz, and I are all planning to attend the walk on Friday with Kate Hogan, because she wasn't able to attend it. And so they decided to try to really get her out there to see it, so she'd be familiar with the area. So anyone's welcome to go.
I found that your maps, they're really specific, and the FERC filing maps are specific. Not that, I don't know how much we need, it's more work for you.
Well, what I did was I took the FERC filing maps and I measured off of them and put the line as best I could. So it's probably not exact there, but it's, I mean, I did do some measurements to try to get it. But as I said, I did that for the walk, and so I don't remember if I did the whole north side of 117 or not. I'll have to look. And they have changed, you know, since the first version that they'd sent us, so they may change again still. We hope that they will, I guess. Completely changed. Okay, so I'll work on maps, and then I don't know if other people want to work on figuring out other agencies. I don't know much about, you know, Clean Water Act and how that's gonna come into play, or when it would come into play. I have no idea. Or whatever other one she said.
I could start taking a look, so I can start keeping around, just get the information.
Natural Gas Act, Clean Water Act, I don't have any idea how those would, how would we interact with those. Okay.
I'll start taking a look.
And she might, Karen probably has more insight beyond what she wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So she's not a commission member, so you can call her directly.
That works out really well.
Well, about this, you could anyway, couldn't you? Couldn't we discuss the
No, because
pipeline? Oh, it has to all be in.
yeah. Your meetings are all public, whether it's, you know, because you're deliberating on something, you can't deliberate on something else.
Yeah.
So I didn't ask, so I did ask Rick to open space and recreation plan, but I mean, I don't think we're getting to it at 10:15.
Well, just to quickly say, we do have that meeting tomorrow evening.
Oh, yeah.
So in your office, we're going to.
Not everybody knows about it, don't they?
Yeah, so there's that, Liz mentioned a student was circulating an email, wanted to do some sort of project, and he sent a lot of information, and on one of the things it said that they listed a whole bunch of different types of projects they would do, and one was grant writing, grant proposals for like town boards and nonprofits, and so I wondered if maybe you could write a grant proposal so we could get money to pay a consultant to do the open space plan for us. He seemed interested, so we're going to be talking to him tomorrow night. Well, yeah, so not him doing the plan, but him writing a grant proposal.
Right, writing the grant.
People at colleges do things for senior projects and graduate school projects. Companies pay college students to do stuff on that basis all the time.
Is that something we should talk about in regards to the budget too? That if we can't get a grant to hire somebody
That's a
to
good
do this,
point,
we
yeah.
really are kind of behind in getting this in. That maybe this is the year we think about putting in for money to hire somebody.
Well, and so then the question is whether it's something that we can put in as a budget line item or whether it would be an article. But I guess I would put it in the budget first, and if they said,
Well,
Yeah, if it's
do we
a-
have an idea of what the cost would be?
well, no, because I sent it out, well, I emailed the woman at the state who receives all the open space and recreation plans, and she did not have any towns that she could refer me to that had used a consultant. And then, Liz, I think you thought somebody in Wellesley
Mhm.
had used one
I haven't heard
back
from her yet.
And then I put it out to an organization I belong to, Mass Conservation Commission Professionals, and that just went out, I think the question just went out last week on Thursday, because we have a meeting this coming Thursday, so they sent a reminder, and I actually haven't looked to see if she included it, but she said she would. And she said it was a good question, she didn't know, and, you know, she didn't know who has used one or not.
Would
So,
MAC know?
What's that?
Would
I don't
MAC? MAC?
I mean, they might, I don't know, I wouldn't think of them as much for knowing that, only because more people, I think, go to them with wetlands stuff
Right,
more than,
right.
but they may.
Just so I maybe just ask general what it was like the last time, because, you know, I'm getting the feeling that this is like a giant bear that nobody wants to
Oh,
touch.
the open space plan?
Yeah.
It's just a time consuming, you know.
Well, so, I mean, the last one that was updated, one of the commission members was not working, and he took it on himself. And he liked it, you know, because he liked learning about all the lands, and he liked doing the research, and he liked doing the maps, and so, you know, he took it on and he liked it. And he did have to meet with other people and, you know, get other input and so forth, but, you know, he just plowed through it. Then we were given an opportunity to just update the action plan, to extend it, and we did that kind of by reaching out to some other groups. So we had some meetings with Park and Rec. I think somebody from Park and Rec came. We had somebody from the Trust who came. We had somebody from Bolton Local who came. And in that case, we really just tried to update some things we were already kind of working on anyway, and also some things that we could reasonably say that we thought we could get to within the next several years. And then Amy Wilson, who was the chairman, and I sat down and we tried to go through and identify. I think in her opinion, she really thought that it was just too big, you know, that it was too big a document, and there were ways to maybe make it, make at least the action plan a little less cumbersome, and also some of the chapters, I guess, that are in it. But when you look at the requirements by the state, there's not a lot of give and take. I mean, the requirements require like all those sections. They require all this input. They require you to have meetings and, you know, have a plan. You know, it's really not just something you can kind of do with fluff, you know. So, I mean, you can copy what we have in it to some degree, but then you have to update. So, you know, there's sections on population and, you know, there's just some things that you have to, you know, you have to just take under and decide to get the information. And I felt, so then, anyway, so we had meetings and we tried to talk it through. We did a survey, we had some group meetings, and then we just couldn't pull it together. Like, we just didn't have time to kind of pull that information into the plan.
I was
And then
gonna try to
Janet
do
was
it
gonna try to
last
do it.
spring, but I just didn't have, I would have to totally put aside the other things I do, and I can't do that. I didn't have the time to do it.
And she was going to have to put aside attending the meetings,
And
which she
continue.
tried to do, but then we had no quorum because we lost a member, and we had to call her back into service, essentially. So,
I just feel like if we had like a separate committee, you know, 2 or 3 people, or 2 or 3 or 4 people who just did that, and they had their own meetings, you know.
That's how some of the other towns do it.
Yeah, and that's all they did, because I don't have the time to do both this, and it's too time consuming.
well, I know that that's, you know, Stowe is doing theirs right now, and they just, you know, they just asked somebody from the Stowe Conservation Trust, you know, to be their liaison on it and to work with them on it, you know. So they are doing it by committee, you know, it's a different committee. And truly, it should be Park and Rec and Conservation and,
and it should have somebody from planning, and it should have, somebody from the selectmen. I mean, but we've sort of tried to do that. We've tried to initiate meetings to get public interest, and we didn't get somebody who would take it on. So I don't know who you're gonna get to take it on. And, I mean, we could put it out there again.
So I found it really hard to just do work on it for an hour, you know what I mean? I felt like I would need to spend at least a half a day or a day on it to really get into it, and that's the problem. I mean, it's not something you can do an hour here, an hour this week, an hour next week, and
Well, also, wasn't there an issue with updating the maps in the document?
yeah.
There was a tool that somebody used, but nobody knows what the tool is now. We don't really have access to it, nobody knows
Well, it was
how to do it.
ArcGIS, so it's not necessarily that it's not a tool, it's that I don't use it, so I don't know how to do the maps. But there are people who would be willing to do the maps if, there was a guy who volunteers with the trust who said he'd be willing to do the maps, but we have to get the information to him. We have to tell him, are these still our priority parcels? Has landowner information changed? Is the parcel acreage changed? He can help do the mapping stuff, but you've got to give him the information. So.
So once it's done, it triggers some other major piece, which is Massachusetts says, okay, now you're able to apply for this grant.
Yes.
And are there other pieces, and how much is that grant? And I'm just wondering.
Well, it varies, so it depends on, I think it's up to, if there's a certain percentage, I think that we have received, and I could be wrong, but I think our maximum on the last one we got was like $250,000. So that was a pretty significant amount towards the acquisition we were doing. I mean, that wasn't on the Weatherby CR, but it was on a land acquisition one. I don't remember, because it's based on percentage of what you're acquiring. But I think that might have been the highest amount that we've received.
Are we at the gifts again?
Yeah.
Okay, so Lamson is the one that's near the Cranberry Meadow? Is that right? The Lamson
No.
or Paulson?
Paulson.
Oh, can we just jump to that one for a second? You sent us these maps, and you said in your email that it's not adjacent to Cranberry Meadow.
Right.
Is this it, the yellow block?
Yes, that's the piece.
Then that looks like it is.
No, because Cranberry Meadow is this piece right here.
Oh, I thought, wait. Oh, what's Town of Fulton?
That's a tax title piece.
Oh.
So that's not
what is the tax
conservation.
title piece?
It's owned by the town, it's owned by the selectmen.
And
It's not, it's,
becomes what?
right now, it's just owned by the town. They could sell it,
Oh, they could do anything.
something.
Oh, Cranberry Meadow's down, Cranberry Meadow's down.
It's right here. That's the Cranberry Meadow piece.
Oh, did we must have thought this was Cranberry Meadow, because we were looking at,
Oh, yeah, right.
like last year. I don't think we ever would have considered this little piece if we knew that
Well, I
Cranberry
don't-
Meadow was down there.
Well, but I don't know why, I mean, so if you look at the map, I mean, so Atlantic Union College
Oh,
is a
maybe
little
that's right.
landlocked piece.
Okay.
And they, in the past, sold land to the town for conservation purposes.
Oh, okay.
And then this is, right now, owned by the town of Bolton. It's, I don't know what it could ever be used for, it's pretty wet, but, it's
All
not
right.
conservation land. But so if you decided that you did want to protect the Polson piece, you
It
might
would be with
end
a
up,
plan, right?
you might end up getting, a bunch of little parcels in there conserved,
Right, you would only be interested in that little piece if you were gonna be
Atlantic
interested in
Union
these.
College owns.
I know, that is weird, huh?
Yeah.
They owned land on the other side of Burnham Road as well, but it's now conservation land.
They're not doing that well, from what I've heard.
Yeah, well, they probably wouldn't, they might be willing to gift it, but they didn't gift the other one, they sold it. There may have been some part of it was a
Well,
gift,
they want
but,
to sell it.
yeah.
And altogether, these three pieces, let's say like 4 under there, 4 acres?
Is
I
that
think that says
parcel
under
number?
Atlantic.
Oh, I can't see.
Oh, underneath. So
Yeah,
it's
it might be
only
4.3. Paulson's is
Just about 10 acres.
1.4. Right.
Even if you got it all, it would only be
Yeah.
about 10.
So, I mean, I think the stumbling block that we had last winter when Paulson first came in was that you couldn't get to it. And so we kept waiting for the right conditions to be able to get to it. And then it kind of get backburner because we got a lot of snow. And then there was just a busy period where I couldn't organize getting everybody out there, and so, you know, one of the things that, again, so one of our off-topic night meetings is supposed to be, maybe, it might be, you know, acquiring gifts, you know, or acquiring land, and what are the things that we want to do in terms of piecemeal, or in terms of, you know, making sure it's not contaminated, you know, and that it's, you know, it's got clear title and all of those kinds of things. What are we willing to spend the town money on for what size, what, you know, pieces make sense? And again, it may not, it's, you know, you're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, you're talking, you know, $1,000 or two possibly, you know, for doing those kinds of things. So is that worth it, you know, to get that gift, you know? But so, I don't, again, on these pieces, I don't know whether that is a topic that we want to talk about as one of our first off-night meetings, so that then we can address some of these gifts, you know, or do we want to just talk about these gifts and not worry about, like, the overall topic?
Option one.
Okay, so go through it as one of our first okay.
Can we, could we start maybe a running list of topics, or does, because we're gonna meet a couple nights, and as we have a couple of meetings coming up before our off night, maybe you want to start throwing some topics on the list, unless.
You had a long list already.
Did I email that to you, or?
I think you did. The first email on it, didn't you list? That's when I said, can we pare it down, because I thought you were saying this is what we're going to talk about on the first.
Oh, well, anyway, I don't remember if I sent a list together. I could work on a list.
I think you had, yeah, the very first one had a bunch of things.
Yeah, and then you guys can add to it then. I'll just send it as a separate email or something. Okay. So it's 10:30, looks like. It's time to adjourn, maybe?
We have time to adjourn.